My wife, who's 36, and I, who's 39, have been together for 7 years and married for 5. We've had our share of good and bad times like any couple, but I believed our relationship was strong with trust and love. We both had regular jobs, and though we weren't rich, we were happy and comfortable. About a year ago, my wife, let's call her Anna, got really interested in personal finance. She started reading books, watching YouTube videos, and going to seminars on the topic. I supported her new interest, thinking it was great that she wanted to improve our finances for a better future. Honestly, I don't know much about finance. Besides basic things like mutual funds, I'm pretty clueless about investing. I only have a superficial understanding and don't invest much except in mandatory tax-saving schemes. Coming from a marketing background, I have limited exposure to finance, so I usually rely on tax consultants like most people do. With the rise of finance influencers on social media, Anna got into learning about it too. She wanted to understand the stock market and cryptocurrency. While I get the stock market, crypto is way beyond my understanding. I did join Anna for a few virtual seminars at first, but the concept seemed alien to me. Things were fine until she started spending more time with a wealthy investor she met at one of these seminars, whom she called D. D was supposedly mentoring her on investing and wealth building. The mentoring concept is becoming more common in America, with everyone claiming to be a mentor. She also stopped contributing money to household expenses, saying she was investing in our future. I trusted her and managed all the household bills on my own. I didn't pay much attention, but as weeks turned into months, their relationship raised serious concerns. Anna spent a lot of time with D, even late into the night. She justified it by saying she had a day job and evening was the only time for her passion. When I expressed my concerns, she got defensive and belittled me for not understanding investments. She mocked me, saying she'd make us rich and I'd regret not supporting her. I tried not to interfere, but when the red flags became obvious, I had to be alert. She also started dressing provocatively, but I didn't bring it up since I'd never commented on her clothes before. However, she neglected our relationship, so I confronted her. As usual, she brushed off my concerns, saying she was securing our future, and I should be supportive, not judgmental. Gradually, I became distant because I felt like I was carrying the relationship alone. I thought she'd notice, but she was too busy learning about investments, and we became more like housemates. We rarely spoke unless it was important, even though we lived in the same house. After her day job, she went out for seminars or mentorship classes. One evening, I walked past the seminar hall where Anna's mentor, D, used to teach a finance class. Something prompted me to go inside and see what was happening. Upon entering, I noticed a different event taking place. I inquired with the security staff about D's company seminars and their frequency. They informed me that these seminars were not regular, with the last one occurring months ago. Outside, I saw some guys in t-shirts promoting a finance masterclass with the influencer's name. I approached them, got details, and took note of everything. The influencer held seminars every 2 to 3 months, but mentorship classes, led by mentors like D in cafes, were weekly from 7 to 9 p.m. Anna used to come home after midnight. I gathered details from the cafe and left. The next day, I asked Anna if she had a class that day, and she curtly replied, "I have classes every day." Despite this, I knew from my previous findings that the class was only on Saturdays. In the evening, I visited the cafe and witnessed Anna in an intimate situation with D. I observed them exchanging flirtatious glances and recorded their interactions. I stood at a distance, watching until they engaged in a more intimate act. I recorded it when they were about to kiss, and then sat at their table, identifying myself as Anna's soon-to-be ex-husband. Anna tried to explain it as a one-on-one mentoring session, but I sarcastically remarked on the close mentoring. The other guy laughed and left, showing a player's attitude. Directly asking Anna if she slept with the other guy, she admitted to it, justifying it as part of an investing deal. She claimed it was a component of her personal finance education, where D promised significant earnings after completing the classes and fulfilling his requests, which included sleeping with him. She agreed to it, and I sensed she was trying to justify her actions. I played along for a while, asking if it was consensual. She confirmed it, saying it was a one-time thing for our future. Losing my temper, I shouted at her, questioning why she took it upon herself to secure our future. I told her she didn't need to think about mine. I could handle it. I yelled so loudly that people nearby glared at us. I stood up and left the cafe. Outside, she tried to hold my arms, but I shrugged her off, telling her to go to her mentor and not come home. Returning home devastated, I couldn't believe she used the pretext of learning personal finance to hide her infidelity. A few minutes later, Anna arrived, claiming it wasn't for fun. She slept with him to learn money-making tricks. I asked her to leave the house, and she pleaded, insisting it wasn't cheating but part of a business. I couldn't understand what kind of business she was involved in. I told her there was no point sleeping with her mentor to learn personal finance. She could earn actual money without doing so. She got angry, saying she'd prove me wrong, calling me too old-fashioned to understand modern concepts. She went into a mode of showing off her potential earnings, claiming she'd be a billionaire while I'd retire with little money. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but not while with me. She packed her stuff and left. 2 days later, on Saturday, she returned, stating she wasn't there to apologize but to take her remaining stuff. I didn't respond, and she drove off. She seemed unremorseful, choosing her actions over our relationship. Update. Not much has occurred except for the divorce, so here's a quick update. Anna didn't come close to learning personal finance. It looked more like a scam than an investment. I don't know a lot about it, but anyone promising quick money and huge returns is suspicious. Making money genuinely isn't easy, and it certainly doesn't happen overnight. But it's not my concern anymore. My divorce was finalized last week, and it went smoothly. I don't have significant wealth for her to fight over. Our home was a rented condo. In terms of alimony, she earned almost as much as me. Also, she cheated, so she isn't entitled to pay alimony. The joint account is closed, and we split the money. We don't have children, so there's no question of child support. Thank goodness we don't have kids. It would have complicated things. It's not as easy as it sounds. I'm still coping with her cheating. She's been telling everyone I'll come back, begging for reconciliation when she's rich, after learning about personal finance risks. I wished her luck. Show everyone that our divorce happened because I was insecure about her progress. She labeled me as controlling and jealous, but I listened with a smile and showed everyone the video I recorded of her with the fair partner. She hid her face after that, and common friends quickly changed their alliances. The last I heard about her, she was living with her mom during the divorce period. She's definitely not remorseful for what she destroyed. I don't know if she's genuinely learning personal finance or investing, or if it was just an excuse for an affair. If she succeeds in sorting her finances, good for her. I don't want money tainted with infidelity. By the way, recently I started watching a lot of videos on investing. I might be jumping to conclusions too fast. I don't know, but with ample free online videos providing enough information for beginners, I highly doubt you need a mentor for this. It's something you can self-examine. Right now, I'm trying to distance myself from any conversation that involves her. It was mentally draining. I've picked up my painting hobby to keep myself distracted, joined a fitness club to shed extra calories, and I'm focusing on eating healthy and keeping drinks in check. I drank too much during the pre-divorce period and gained a lot of extra pounds. I'll update the list if anything progresses. Update. It wasn't a finance class, it was a scam, and that's the truth. The main point in this update is that Anna fell wounded person to a scam. Remember that finance influencer who conducted seminars? Turns out, he was a scam artist, deceiving people and making false promises of significant returns. Anna invested about 30% of her income in that scheme, even selling valuable assets like her family heirloom diamond ring and platinum necklace to go all in. It appears everything was just a scam. The influencer is now on the run, and his teammates, including the affair partner, have been arrested with an ongoing investigation. After this news broke, those Anna had boasted to about her impending riches mocked her. She had flaunted her newfound knowledge, belittling those with limited investment understanding. Now, those same people are targeting and making fun of her. Apparently, she blocked many of those mocking her, even dedicating her social media account due to being tagged in posts related to the finance influencer she supported. It's a lesson in not boasting before achieving victory, something she had been doing all along. I've made significant progress, shedding extra weight and getting into muscle training, which I enjoy. I've also returned to painting, and it feels really good. I haven't rushed into dating yet, not because I'm trying to forget the past, but simply because I'm not ready for it. Clearly, he was a scammer who managed to deceive her. Update. I had a visitor, and it turned out to be Anna. She looked really sad and told me she had fallen for a scam. A business partner and his boss, who was into fraud, had cheated a lot of people, including her, and ran off with their money to another country. I asked if the partner got caught, but she said no. The partner and a few other mentors were close to the fraud boss and managed to escape at the right time, leaving the rest of the team behind. I asked if she came to me because her partner ran away, but she said no. She claimed she loved me and wanted to talk. I reminded her that we were already divorced, so there was no point in talking. She said karma punished her. She lost a lot of money and respect, and people were mocking her. She pointed out that I came out fine from the situation and asked what more I wanted. I told her I wanted peace, her out of my life, and at that moment, out of my house. She then suggested that now that she and Dee had nothing between them, we could get back together. I disagreed, saying Dee wouldn't have taken her because he had many women like her learning money-making tricks. She pleaded for reconciliation, saying she wasn't emotionally involved with her partner and got carried away by the idea of getting rich quickly. I made it clear that getting back together was not an option. I had moved on, and her pleading didn't affect me. If she had pleaded when her affair was exposed, I might have considered forgiveness, but seeing her true colors changed that. She came back to me only after losing everything, still mocking me as she left the house. During the divorce, she showed no remorse. Now, when she lost everything, she came to me. Unbelievable. I told her to leave because I had to go to my fitness class. She commented on my appearance, asking if I was dating someone. I said it was none of her business. She started crying, saying I was rude. I told her she should thank me for being civil and listening to her. After what she did, she shouldn't be allowed in my house. Despite that, I remained polite and entertained her. She held my hands and kept apologizing. I told her crying and begging meant nothing to me now. I used to love her, but I've moved on. She left after I became cold toward her pleas. A few days later, her mother called, asking to meet urgently. I agreed, and over coffee the next day, she apologized for Anna. I hugged her and said it wasn't her fault. She didn't need to say sorry. Unlike Anna, she had always been sweet to me, even during the divorce, and didn't speak badly about me. She asked me if I could get back together with Anna because she felt Anna was really sorry for what she did. She explained that Anna was constantly crying and falling into depression. She was worried that Anna might even become suicidal because she lost all her savings, part of her monthly salary, and some valuable jewelry pieces, which I had mentioned before. I didn't know Anna had lost her savings. Anna was always saving, and I'm sure she had at least $100,000. Losing such a large amount of money can affect anyone's mental health. I questioned how getting back together would help Anna deal with the depression from losing money. She said that Anna truly loved me, and even in her lowest moments, having me in her life could bring her some happiness. To be honest, I did feel sorry for Anna. I even briefly considered getting back together, but that feeling didn't last long. I quickly returned to my decision not to take her back. I told her I couldn't do it. I didn't love her anymore. It turned into a cycle of tears and pleas to help her daughter avoid depression. I stood firm on my decision and suggested taking Anna to therapy. She needed counseling more than a husband. My ex-mother-in-law was disappointed that I declined her request, but understood my perspective. There was one more thing that would have upset Anna more, and that was my investment journey. I followed some genuine finance YouTubers who helped me understand personal finance and investing on a broader level. This knowledge greatly assisted in building my portfolio, and guess what? I'm already making a good profit. I've ventured into the stock and bond markets too. However, I'm still unsure about crypto trading and don't want to step into unfamiliar territory. I'm taking things at a steady pace, learning one thing at a time. Understanding the stock market has reinforced my belief that making money takes time, patience, and courage. I'm hoping to come out of this stronger before thinking about dating again. I still don't feel ready for it. Second story. I'm a 37-year-old guy, and I've been married to Judy, who's 32, for 2.5 years. It's tough to pinpoint a specific moment that defines everything, but things took a bad turn after a frustrating phone call. I was in the living room catching up on football highlights I missed when Judy's phone started ringing, annoyingly interrupting the game. Fed up with the ringtone cutting into the commentary, I brought her phone to the kitchen asking her to answer it. Then, the phone rang again, and she seemed ready to snap at the caller. Since we both worked in the corporate world, Judy had a rule about keeping our work life separate from our home life. She believed it was our responsibility to separate the two and encouraged me to do the same. She avoided work calls on weekends and preferred emails for urgent matters. I expected her to get upset, but she stayed silent, and her expression changed. It wasn't until dinner that she shared what the call was about. "They are transferring out of state," she said. "Transfer? Why? Where?" I asked, realizing the situation. "I told you about the company's expansion. The board wants to transfer people to the new site to monitor branch development," she explained. I understood how transfers usually worked, often without external commitment. Being married, she wouldn't be considered for a transfer unless she requested it. I asked if she applied, and she said no. I suggested rejecting it, but she explained it came with a promotion she'd been working hard for. Judy was ambitious, a quality I admired. For a year, she worked tirelessly for the promotion, volunteering and ensuring her team functioned smoothly. It was finally paying off, although not in the way we expected. Her salary doubled with perks, but I knew it wasn't about the money. She wanted to climb the corporate ladder. "What should I do?" she asked. It wasn't her fault, but she put me in a tough spot. I had two options: tell her to reject the transfer, losing the promotion, or support her pursuit of her hard-earned career advancement. Thinking people make long-distance marriages work, although I hadn't seen many examples, I convinced myself it could be done. Not wanting to hold her back, I told her, "I'm going to support you. Whatever decision you make, we can make it work." Boy, do I regret those words. Her eyes lit up, and I thought I made the right decision. I convinced myself it would work, remembering friends who traveled for business and sustained their marriages. Looking back, she didn't really leave me much of an option to refuse. If I had honestly shared my opinion and asked her not to take the job, she would have considered it. But knowing Judy well, I sensed it would come at a cost, possibly leading to the collapse of our marriage. I didn't want that. I also disliked the idea of her being far away. However, if our marriage hung in the balance, the lesser evil seemed to be letting go. It looked like the only logical decision, and faced with a similar situation again, I'm not sure if I would choose differently. She spent the evening thanking me for being understanding, but I couldn't shake the wave of irritation, realizing my wife had manipulated me into feeling self-conscious so that my decision favored her. I was sure she had baited me. However, it's hard to say. A manager, seeing her excitement after finalizing travel arrangements, and I had a lengthy discussion about making the marriage work. We planned to call every day to stay involved in our daily lives. The idea of cheating never crossed my mind because I believed Judy was too goal-oriented, especially since her company agreed to give her 5 days off every month. "It'll work," she assured me just before boarding the plane. Little did I know that my marriage had ended in that instant. Every long-distance relationship starts the same way. Calls around the clock, even with Bluetooth earphones so we could talk while she worked. For the first 2 months, it seemed to work. We were on the phone more, and I knew more about her life than when I lived with her. Suddenly, it didn't feel like I'd made the wrong decision prioritizing her ambition over my needs. We were in a good place, at least until 2 months ago. Judy called one morning to cancel her trip back to Michigan. Her company's quarterly performance had been below par, and she had to work on recruiting more capable professionals to fill out administrative roles to make her job easier. I didn't mind, as I was on the verge of closing a huge deal that would give me more flexibility in how I worked. The compensation for closing the deal was worth millions. With that, I could be closer to my wife. 5 days were inconsequential when I could be with her as long as I wanted. I kept the deal a secret to surprise her after it was sealed. To make that happen, I needed to be at my best, which meant no distractions of any type. I didn't call her, and she didn't call me. It was the longest we had gone without talking on the phone. We still texted on WhatsApp, but we were both too busy for meaningful conversation. I'm explaining everything because a few days ago, a mutual friend called me callous and manipulative after hearing what happened. If you ask me, I'm neither of those things. I consider myself a wounded person, which is why I'm here recounting everything between myself and Judy. Anyway, back to the story. The big deal came through, ensuring my family's financial security for life. It was a game changer, making me part of the elite 10% of America in terms of wealth. That night, while waiting for confirmation, I resisted the temptation to call her. I wanted to tell her about the past week and how our lives would change. Judy's biggest dream was a trip to Paris. Instead of calling her, I planned our vacation there: ticket, hotel, food, places to visit. I had everything sorted out and was going to break the news together, all at once. I scrolled through my WhatsApp and landed on her story. She was hugging this guy, Henry. Tall, olive skin, brown hair, blue eyes. He looked no younger than 35. He was the first person employed when she started working. He was from the area, knew about the job, and she needed his expertise. Underneath the picture, she captioned, "Dark times reveal angels." I should have suspected something was wrong. I think I did because I held off from telling her that the deal came through when it did. Instead, I took the next available flight I could find to California to see her. As you may have already guessed, she was having an affair with Henry. I phoned Judy's workplace in Michigan to find out where she was, since I planned a surprise visit. Luckily, the receptionist who answered was a mutual friend, so convincing her not to tell Judy was easy. Throughout the flight, I imagined scenarios of how Judy might react. After sharing news of the deal, I went straight to her branch from the airport, hoping to have dinner with her to break the news. However, I learned she hadn't reported to work that day, so I had to Uber myself to the given address. I wondered why the branch receptionist was surprised to find that Judy was married, but I didn't press, since I knew Judy liked to keep her life private. After climbing 4 flights of stairs, I arrived at her door with a bouquet of flowers behind my back. Right before knocking, I heard Judy moan, "Keep going, keep going." It made me sick. Just 5.5 months away and she cheated. Rage surged, but I tried to stay composed. I left her apartment and drove back to her office to instruct the receptionist not to mention my visit, even tipping her $100. I stayed in a hotel close to her apartment to keep a close watch. Over the week, I discreetly followed her with a rental car, and she didn't suspect a thing. She moved between work, yoga, and her apartment, making it easy to track her. This is how I found out she spent a lot of time with Henry, and it wasn't hard to deduce he was the one she was cheating with. I called and messaged her during this time, but she used work as an excuse and begged me to give her space to get her professional life in order. At that moment, I decided not to let myself be played by her anymore. I drafted divorce letters and waited for her return with Henry. It seemed like all they did was have closeness. Upon arriving at her door, I heard nothing but moans, grunts, and groans. I picked the lock, tiptoed to her bedroom with my phone, recording everything. As disgusting as it was to watch, I recorded a full minute of their relationships before revealing myself. In that moment, while she scrambled for clothes, I felt powerful. Seeing her anguish when I threatened to share the video with her colleagues and family justified my decision to end things. She begged for forgiveness, saying she'd resign and go to therapy, but I was disgusted by her actions, unable to entertain her pleas. She said she resigned and dropped off signed divorce papers yesterday, but I still sent the video to her parents. I want them to see the kind of person their child became. Some comments suggested she checked out of the relationship when she took the job. She had been wanting this for a while, and probably cheating on you for a while as well. She manipulated you into agreeing to take the job, practically forcing you into saying yes. Huge, life-changing decisions like that will have a drastic impact on the family. Update. My wife got moved to a different state to oversee the opening of her company's new branch. While there, she started a relationship with a coworker. I found out about it during a surprise visit after our divorce. I took some time to sort myself out, and for a bit, I was occupied enough to not dwell on the whole situation. I went on vacation to the Dominican Republic for a week, which was pretty awesome. One evening, I got a Reddit notification about a post. When I wrote it, I mainly wanted to vent my anger, irritation, disgust, and rage. Surprisingly, it gained a lot of attention. Reading through the comments, one post stood out. Someone shared a similar experience, mentioning feeling miserable for not taking revenge to the extent needed to satisfy their spirit. It might sound strange, and it was definitely an unpopular opinion, as many people, judging by their comments, were content with me just exposing her infidelity to her parents and getting her fired without going further. It was somewhat satisfying to see her relationship with her parents fall apart after the video, but other than that, it seemed like I hadn't accomplished much. Last I heard, she was in a motel working at a night bar, fittingly ironic for the cheater she is. About 3 weeks after returning from the Dominican Republic, she showed up at my door, begging me to forgive her and take her back. It was amusing to watch. She seemed like all she did was cry in her spare time, bloodshot, swollen, and puffy eyes. Whether it was from crying or dealing with some issues, I didn't care. In fact, I realized there wasn't much I could do to her. She was already an emotional wreck. I decided to shift my focus to the guy she cheated on me with, Henry. I let her in, and she probably thought I was reconsidering the divorce because she immediately started explaining herself, thinking I hadn't gone through with it. She even claimed to have lost her parents' respect and that my actions made her regret what she did. I posed a test question, something I knew she'd fail, just to be sure I wasn't seen as callous or wicked for having a justified motive. I looked her in the eye and asked how many times it happened. You'd expect her to learn from the experience and regain some dignity by telling the truth, but she said once, swearing it was the truth. According to her, running a failing business, with expenses 3 times more than revenue, became a burden. She didn't want to burden me further, thinking she already asked too much by pursuing her ambition. I wasn't bothered by her excuses. What stunned me was how effortlessly she could lie to my face. It was hard to believe our entire relationship had any truth to it after that. My dad always thought it was almost impossible to look someone in the eye and lie. Well, he was way off. Honestly, I wasn't sure how many times they got together, but I had a sense of when it started, and it definitely wasn't just once. I might have doubted her lies if I hadn't followed her for the first 2 weeks in Michigan, and on the day I arrived, she was making quite a scene in her room. Her obsession with privacy didn't matter much then, but I kept my cool and didn't let on that I knew. What about Henry? Who knows? He's probably still in Michigan with his wife. Imagine my surprise when I found out Henry was married. Despite the frustration, I stayed calm. I saw an opportunity to extend my revenge to hurt not only her, but also Henry. There was no way he'd walk away without facing the consequences. I didn't need a mirror to know my acting skills weren't Oscar-worthy, but the way she eagerly spilled everything, including lies about how Henry manipulated her, made me sure she was unsuspecting. I was baiting her. After telling her to give me time to think, I ushered her out and immediately sent the video to everyone who knew her, including her receptionist friend at the office. First, I booked a ticket to Michigan to use the information Judy gave me about Henry's marriage, but I planned to damage him where it hurts. I rented a studio apartment close to him, watching from a distance, waiting for the videos of his escapades with my ex-wife to drop. Meanwhile, I observed his wife, Annie. She was gorgeous, with flowing blonde hair, stormy gray eyes, and a scary smile. Although my initial plan was to bait her into a compromising situation, I had a change of heart. But I know what you're thinking. Aside from the money, I'm a pretty decent-looking guy. Decent enough to be prom king? Anyway, Annie was a kind and genuinely caring person. I was particularly surprised by her honesty. We went from greeting by the roadside to having coffee over an accidental bump, and I orchestrated it over coffee. I learned a lot about her, and for some days, I forgot why I was in Michigan in the first place. It was one of those friendships that was just easy to keep. I even started seeing less of Henry for a while, thinking the plan didn't go as I wanted. Apparently, he'd been fired and spent all his time looking for a new job, trying not to raise suspicion from Amy. During our discussions, I learned Henry was an immigrant who came to the United States on a student visa. Amy also told me about her marital issues. She explained how her husband barely touched her and barely paid her any mind until about 2 months ago when things suddenly changed. What she didn't know was that she provided enough information to ruin Henry's story. They hadn't been married for 3 years, meaning Harry wasn't a citizen, even if he had applied for the green card. I needed Amy to turn on her husband, so I told her the truth about everything. At first, she was mad at me for lying, but she soon got over it. I showed her the video and explained how it haunted my dreams, knowing they were both going about their miserable lives, not justifiably affected by their actions. Luckily, it didn't take much to convince Amy. In the next hour, we planned how she would confront Henry. I wasn't there to witness the drama, but I made sure he knew I was behind everything bad happening to him. Last I heard, he was getting deported to wherever he came from. Honestly, now I can say I feel satisfied.
I've always been drawn to architecture. From sketching buildings in school notebooks to earning a degree, my goal has been to create spaces that inspire. Along the way, I met Sally, who believed in my vision, and together we built a successful architectural firm. My best friend David joined us and became crucial to our success, managing projects and ensuring my designs were executed properly. Everything seemed perfect until one day, while adjusting a project, I caught a news report about a liquidation in Ocala. To my shock, the footage showed Sally and David leaving a motel room together. Sally had left work early, claiming to run errands, while David said he was in Gainesville. The betrayal hit hard. 14 years of marriage and a decade of friendship all called into question. Our firm had grown rapidly, especially after winning a City Hall Design Award. We expanded our team to 12 architects, moved into a new 7-story building, and enjoyed steady profits from rented office space. I had invested the most, followed by Sally and David, and things were going well until that afternoon. The distance between Sally and me had grown over the years due to my long work hours, but I never doubted her love or loyalty. However, the motel footage stirred confusion. I contacted my friend George, who worked at the TV station, and asked for a copy of the broadcast. When I reviewed the footage, it confirmed what I feared. Sally and David had been caught kissing at the motel. I reached out to Tom Noble, the motel's owner, to check the surveillance footage. He said the police had already taken the tapes, but I could view them at any time. I made arrangements to see the recordings immediately, bracing for what they might reveal. I shut down my computer, told my secretary I was leaving early, and asked her to inform security. Once everyone had left, I watched the surveillance video. I saw Dave arrive at the motel first, get the key, and enter room 116. Sally showed up a few minutes later and went in. After a while, a man with a weapon ran past their room, followed by the police. Then it was quiet until the TV crew arrived. The footage showed Sally and Dave kissing before they left the room. I asked the motel clerk if he knew them. "Sure, they come here every week, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson," he said. They had been regulars for 2 years. I took a copy of the video and headed home, forming a plan. I couldn't let them know I was aware of their affair yet. I needed time to figure everything out, especially if they were also stealing from the business. I decided I needed a forensic audit. Fortunately, we were scheduled to attend a Southeastern Architects Association meeting in a week, and I planned to use that time to investigate. With my secretary Marge going on maternity leave, I thought of Debbie, her replacement. She was intelligent, capable, and even proposed setting up a childcare room in the office building, an idea Sally and Dave both liked. I needed to talk to Debbie more and involve her in my plan. Despite everything, I still couldn't believe Sally and Dave were betraying me. Sally was always affectionate, telling me she loved me multiple times a day. Dave also acted deeply in love with his wife, Mary. I had to act convincingly tonight at dinner to avoid suspicion. Dinner went smoothly, though Mary mentioned the liquidation at the Nobility Motel. Sally flinched, but Dave stayed calm, asking if it was the place we had worked on before. I suspected Mary knew about the affair and was subtly provoking them. I had to keep my cool. After dinner, we were all cleaning up. Sally was washing dishes and Dave was drying. Mary and I were bringing in items from the patio. As we entered, Sally and Dave were chatting quietly. Mary joked, "What are you two planning? Sneaking off once John and I are asleep?" They both jumped and Sally laughed, joking that sneaking around was the only way they got any love, adding that Dave was too scared of being caught by Mary. We all laughed, though I couldn't shake my unease. Once Mary and Dave left, I asked Sally if there was something going on. She looked at me with her usual affection, denying anything was wrong, saying she loved me and was ready to start trying for a baby. I couldn't figure out what to believe. She seemed so sincere, but I felt torn. I went upstairs and she was already waiting for me, acting as though nothing had changed. But the guilt and confusion overwhelmed me and I ended up getting sick. Sally tried to comfort me, but I couldn't bear to look at her. I quickly dressed, grabbed my keys, and left the house, not sure where to go. I eventually stopped at a cafe, needing time to think. My phone rang. It was Sally, but I ignored it and ordered a coffee. Lost in my thoughts, I wondered how I hadn't seen the signs of my marriage falling apart. As I sat there, Debbie, my new assistant, saw me and offered to listen. She shared that she had been through difficult times with her own family and understood tough situations. I hesitated, but eventually told her everything. About Sally's affair with Dave and how I couldn't believe it, especially with how often Sally said she loved me. Debbie, still holding my hand, suggested that Sally might have a problem, similar to her sister who loved her husband but couldn't stop cheating. Her sister's situation ended in divorce and illness. Debbie reassured me that people can change, but she emphasized the importance of getting answers. Did Sally love Dave? How long had the affair been going on? Why hadn't it stopped? She recommended I start by getting a detailed summary of Sally's phone calls, which might help me understand more. This young woman was sharp, and I decided to trust her since she already knew most of what was going on. I told her, "I'll pay you to help me gather the information I need." She laughed. "I'll help you, but I don't want your money. Friends don't charge friends." "All right, friend, but call me John outside of work. We'll keep things normal at the office." I asked her to find an investigator and a forensic accountant. I explained that Sally, Dave, and I would be at a meeting in Atlanta for a few days. I gave her a company credit card to cover expenses and explained when and where Sally and Dave met, suggesting hidden cameras might be useful. Debbie smiled. "I may need some cash for a babysitter." "Use the card. You can withdraw up to $300. The limit is $10,000, and I'll give you the PIN." I thanked her, saying, "I won't forget what you're doing for me. I take care of my friends." She smiled softly. "I trust you completely." I felt a weight lift off my chest as I looked at her. She was impressive. I started to think maybe the trouble with my wife was partly my fault. I needed more information to see if it was something we could fix. Debbie then shared more about herself. Her father had been a cop who was tragically eliminated. Afterward, she moved in with her strict uncle. Her sister rebelled and disappeared, returning years later with a husband and baby. Debbie, meanwhile, graduated as valedictorian and quickly worked her way up in a department store, becoming a manager at just 18. But an attack at a work party left her pregnant and unemployed. Despite her challenges, she kept going, raising her daughter on her own. I admired her resilience and told her, "If you ever need anything, just let me know." "What are you studying?" "Business administration, but tuition's tough and my savings are running low." I joked, "Sweetie, I have a proposition for you," and offered to pay for her college in exchange for a contract to work for me during and after her studies. I explained that her pay would increase with her GPA. She was excited, saying, "Wow, I won't disappoint you, John. Just don't call me Mr. outside of work." As she left, she gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, a tear running down her face. After she left, I noticed her bill was only $2.50, so I paid for both of us. The next morning, I heard Debbie's heels clicking down the hall. She paused at my office door with a bright smile. "Good morning, boss." "Good morning, Debbie. Come on in." She placed 3 $1 bills on my desk and grinned. "I stopped by the cafe this morning to pay for last night, but they said the check was already paid. You must have covered mine." I laughed. "Yeah, I did, but it was only $2.50. "You tipped too, didn't you?" "Yeah, I guess I did." I handed her an envelope. "Here's the credit card. The PIN is inside. Start on those projects we discussed. I'll tell Marge you're working on the daycare plan so you can take your time. Sound good?" She smiled, taking the envelope. "Yes, sir, John. I'll report back later if I'm done before the day's over." By noon, Debbie returned with an envelope. "Here's everything you requested. Let me know if it works for the audit. I need to confirm by tomorrow for this weekend. I'll also need to bring my daughter Dolly with me for the surveillance setup." "Should I come back in an hour?" she asked. I assured her I'd have answers soon and smiled as she left. Then I buzzed Sally. "Hi, honey, what's going on?" Sally answered. "Not much. You didn't go out for lunch?" I asked. "No, too busy. I'm getting payroll ready early since we're leaving for Atlanta on Friday. Is everything set with Dave and Mary?" "Yep. Are you feeling better today? You seemed off last night," I replied. "Yeah, I'm good now. By the way, that girl Debbie dropped off some daycare info. She's sharp," I mentioned. Sally teased. "She sure is. Should I be worried about her around you?" I laughed. "Why? You've never worried before. Besides, she's way too young. If I were 20 years younger, though, maybe." Sally laughed too. "She's a cutie, that's for sure, and her daughter is even cuter." That struck a nerve, as I wanted a baby too. Later that afternoon, Dave stopped by. I asked him, "Are you ready for Atlanta?" "Heck yeah," Dave said, then added, Sally told me you weren't feeling well last night. You all right? Yeah, just something I ate, I replied with a grin. As if I could ever cheat on Sally, she'd liquidate me. Dave chuckled, but seemed slightly uncomfortable. She loves you. She'd never cheat. Maybe, but under the right conditions, anyone might. She has plenty of admirers, I said. True, Dave agreed, but she's yours. The conference went well, though I was nervous. I called Debbie daily, and she confirmed she had all the info I needed. Sally and I were busy with activities, and though exhausted, we had a good time. After the last day's events, we returned home Sunday evening. While sitting in the back seat with Mary, I noticed Sally repeatedly pushing Dave's hands away while she drove. She glanced back at us, but I pretended to be asleep under my cap. After a moment, I saw her signal to Dave, who turned around to check on us. When I closed my eyes and reopened them, Dave was sitting closer to Sally, and I could hear her softly moaning. I sat up and asked, "Where are we now?" They both jumped. Sally replied, "We just entered Florida. We're looking for a pit stop so Dave can take over driving." At that moment, I knew my marriage was over. The rest of the drive was quiet. After stopping for fast food, we returned home, unloaded the car, and went to bed. Sally snuggled up and quickly fell asleep, but I couldn't. After lying awake for an hour, I called Debbie, who answered right away. "How did things go?" I asked. "Smoothly," she said, "but I suspect tomorrow will be chaotic." I asked her to leave everything in my desk drawer, thanked her, and hung up. Monday started like any other. I left for work before Sally woke up, and Dave arrived shortly after me. I doubted he could stop by to see Sally without being noticeably late. The accounting report was mostly clean, except Dave was misusing his expense account by a couple $100s a month. Nothing major, but it set a bad example. Then I heard Debbie's heels down the hall. She smiled as she poked her head into my office, making the day feel a little brighter. "Hello, boss. How are you today?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet. I haven't read the investigator's report. Did you?" She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I pulled out the report and quickly skimmed through it. My suspicions were confirmed. There was overwhelming evidence. I inserted the DVD and watched the footage. It started with Sally entering the motel room and kissing Dave. They undressed and had sex. I fast-forwarded to the next scene, which was from Thursday. In the video, Sally told Dave, "This is the end. I think we've been too careless. They both suspect something. We can't do this again." Dave agreed, saying it had been a wonderful 5 years. He joked about one last time, but Sally refused, saying she couldn't lose me. They kissed and left. Tears filled my eyes. Debbie shut the door and rushed to my side. "John, are you okay?" she asked. "They're supposed to meet you here in 20 minutes. Do you want me to delay it?" "No," I said. "Give me a minute to wash my face. When is Mrs. Forrester expected? 5 or 10 minutes after Sally and Dave arrive? Can you stall until then? Buzz me when she gets here and escort her in. Stay as a witness. You control the hidden cameras, right?" "Yes, I'll turn them on when they arrive." "Good. The faster Mrs. Forrester comes in, the better." Debbie smiled. "You'll do just fine, Mr. Nelson. I guess you noticed the tissues I put around the room." She glanced at the clock. "I need to get back to my desk." She peeked outside, then blew me a kiss. "Be strong, boss." The door closed behind Debbie. 2 minutes later, the buzzer rang and Dave and Sally entered. I pretended to be on a call, motioning for them to sit. I said, "Right, George, I'll let you know how it goes. Bye." Then the buzzer went off again. Debbie announced, "Mrs. Forrester is here." I welcomed Mary in and said, "Mary, I thought you should be here since this affects you too." Sally and Dave exchanged nervous glances. I introduced Debbie as my temporary secretary and asked everyone to watch the TV monitor. I played the video of Sally meeting Dave at the motel. Sally screamed, "No!" and collapsed onto the floor. Dave glared at me, saying, "You son of a—" Mary interrupted, "No, you're the son of a witch, David. Be quiet. I want to hear this." After more footage, I stopped the video and turned to Mary. "You need to see one more part." I showed the clip where Sally and Dave agreed to stop the affair, fearing they'd been caught. Sally was still crying on the floor. I said firmly, "Enough, Sally. It's too late. You need to hear this. It's about your future." I turned off the DVD and said, "Sally, I will always love you, but I can never trust or live with you again. You'll be served with divorce papers as you leave." I looked at Mary. "I'm sorry to drop this on you, but I think you had an idea this was happening, didn't you?" Mary nodded. "Yes, I did. I smelled Sally's perfume on Dave and knew something was off. I forgive you, John. I've already lined up a lawyer for this." I turned to Sally and Dave. "Cheating is like stealing. Our wedding vows mean forsaking all others, and you both broke that trust. In business, trust is everything. I propose buying you both out, but I'll need time to gather the cash. If not, we sell the business and split the profits. We'll decide in 10 days. Any comments? Mary spoke first. The money Dave invested is mine. I'd like to stay as a silent partner. Dave's fired and has no home now. I smiled. That makes things easier. I'll get the paperwork drawn up. Sally then asked, John, can I keep my share and be a silent partner too? Just send me the dividends. Mary, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this. I was weak and threw away the best man in the world. My life is over. I sighed. Sally, you can keep the house. I'll move out soon. Sally left, and I heard her being served divorce papers. As her heels clicked down the hall, I turned to the window, tears in my eyes. After a few minutes, Debbie gently pulled on my arm and dabbed at my eyes with a tissue. Mr. John, are you all right? I smiled. It's hard to end 14 years of what I thought was a perfect marriage, but I'm relieved I can keep the business. Debbie smiled. I'm happy for both of us. Now you can keep your promise. I would have kept it somehow. How's the daycare project coming along? Debbie smiled, and the tension I'd been feeling vanished. I've finalized all the figures, and even found a retired nurse who'd love to run the daycare. She knows other RNs who would be interested in working part-time or full-time. I'd like to bring her in. I replied, That's your call. If she's a good fit, send her to Joanne in HR. Do you still have money left on the credit card? Yes, more than half. Good. Use it to buy the equipment she needs. If the room requires modifications, arrange a meeting with all department heads, including Sally and Dave's assistants, right after noon in the conference room. I smiled and said, I'm putting a lot on your plate. Can you handle it? Yes, I can. I'll only ask for help if necessary. Great. From now on, set up a daily morning meeting with me. Also, you're now my personal assistant. Find a secretary for yourself and give yourself a raise. She beamed, hugged me, and kissed my lips before pulling back, embarrassed. I'm so sorry. I got excited. I laughed. Thank you for the kiss. I might have to promote you daily. She blushed and said seriously, I hope it's for more than just my kisses. Don't worry. I trust you'll do a great job. You'll be my eyes and ears to help run the business. Promoting Debbie was the best decision I'd made. She handled everything with efficiency, leaving me free to focus on what mattered. The daycare was set up in no time. A couple of weeks later, she walked into my office for our morning meeting, looking professional in a new business suit. Good morning, boss, Debbie said cheerfully as she walked into my office. Good morning, Deb. How are you? I asked. Grinning, she replied, Much better now that I'm here. Thank you. Now meet my new assistant, Debbie said, pressing the intercom button. A tiny girl came bouncing into the room. Here I am, Mommy, the girl exclaimed with excitement. Debbie smiled and introduced her. This is my daughter, Dolly. Say good morning like I taught you. Dolly curtsied sweetly and said, Good morning, Mr. John. I'm pleased to meet you. Grinning, I replied, Good morning, Miss Dolly. Are you enjoying the daycare? Oh, yes, it's fun, and Mommy visits me lots, she said with a bright smile. I couldn't help but ask, Dolly, have you ever been to the zoo? Dolly looked up at Debbie, then back at me. No, where the animals are good? She asked innocently. I smiled at Debbie and turned to Dolly. Well, I'd love to take you and your mommy to the zoo this Sunday if you'd like. Dolly's eyes lit up, and she excitedly asked her mom, Mommy, can we go? Realizing I'd spoken out of turn, I quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Deb. I should have asked you first. Please forgive me. Debbie smiled warmly. It's okay. You just got caught up in the moment. Yes, we'd love to go. I'll pack a picnic. Debbie, do you have a car? I asked, noticing the slight hesitation in her response. No, mine broke down, and I'm saving up for one, she explained. As my personal assistant, you need a company car. I'll arrange everything this afternoon after lunch with you and Dolly, I offered. Sunday at the zoo was wonderful. Dolly was thrilled, and I ended up carrying her for most of the day. Spending time with a child was more special than I had imagined, and I enjoyed Debbie's company too. The next day, I arranged for a company car, a 2-year-old Honda Odyssey. I instructed our transportation chief to clean it up and park it in Dave's old spot, now reserved for Debbie. That afternoon, Debbie stopped by my office with Dolly, letting me know they were heading home. I playfully stuck out my lip in a pretend pout. Dolly's eyes widened as she tugged at her mom. Mr. John is crying, Ma. Debbie and Dolly both asked, What's wrong? I smiled and replied, Dolly didn't kiss me goodbye. Dolly giggled and ran over, arms outstretched. I lifted her, laughing, and after she gave me a sweet kiss, I set her down. Then, I handed Debbie a set of car keys. She looked at them, puzzled. You look so professional in your new suit. and you can't be seen riding the bus. These are the keys to your company car, parked in your new reserved spot, I said. Debbie's eyes widened in surprise. What? Really? Yup. If you don't have a child seat for Dolly, get one. Now, go on, I added with a grin. Debbie hesitated for a moment, then shook her head, scooped up Dolly, and left. The next morning, I saw her pull into the lot in the Honda minivan. When she noticed the coffee on her desk, she smiled, walked into my office, and quietly closed the door behind her. Without a word, she hugged me tightly and kissed me deeply before pulling back and asking, "Why are you so good to me?" I smiled at her. "Because you've earned it. The company runs smoother than ever, and honestly, being around you makes me happy." She looked up at me, searching my face. "Is that really true?" "Of course. You know I don't lie," I reassured her. "John," she started hesitantly, "I need your help. I bought steaks and a grill, but I have no idea how to cook them. Can you show me tonight?" "Sure, I'd love to," I agreed. She hesitated again, then added, "And Dolly's been begging to have you over for dinner. She really likes you. And, well, so do I." She blushed slightly. I smiled warmly. "About the minivan, though, I can't accept it." Her brow furrowed. "You don't like it?" "We love it, but it's too much," I explained. "It's been sitting unused for a year. If you really don't want it, I'll get you something else," I offered. She laughed, shaking her head. Okay, I'll keep it. You sure know how to get your way." I chuckled. "Hey, you're the one who convinced me to set up a daycare. You're good at getting things done." "Just don't be mad at me," she said softly. "I'm not mad. That's why I hired you, to push me to do what's needed. You keep everything running smoothly." She giggled, clearly relieved. "It works, doesn't it?" I grinned. "What time should I come over for dinner?" "How about right after you change? Oh, and the grill is still in the van," she reminded me. "I'll be there soon," I promised. Dinner that night was perfect. Steaks, baked potatoes, and corn on the cob, all cooked on the grill. Afterwards, Dolly and I played Go Fish, and later we treated ourselves to ice cream at Dairy Queen. It was a fun, messy evening, and after helping put Dolly to bed, Debbie and I shared a quiet glass of wine. I knew it was time to leave. "Can I see you tomorrow?" I asked, sensing something in the air. Debbie hesitated again, then said, "John, we need to talk." A chill ran down my spine. "I'm listening," I replied, worried I'd overstepped. "You always listen, but you're not hearing me," she said gently. "I think I need to release you from your promise and find another job." My heart sank. "Why? I thought you loved your job." "I do," she admitted, "but I feel like I owe you so much and I don't know how to repay you." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything, Deb. I've gained far more from you than you've given." She looked at me, clearly confused. "How is that possible? I haven't given you anything." "You've given me the most precious gift of all, time with you and Dolly. Your kindness has saved me. If I weren't so much older, I'd court you with everything I've got." I paused, realizing the weight of what I'd just said. I probably shouldn't have said that. Her eyes softened as she looked at me intently. "Are you telling me you love me but won't pursue me because of your age?" "Yes," I whispered. "I love you with all my heart." As I poured my heart out, Debbie's face lit up with a big smile. She jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately, then showered my face with kisses. "John, I love you too. Dolly loves you so much. I want you tonight, and I want to wake up with you in my bed. You'll have to teach me about Zex." I smiled as she kissed me again. "I don't know much about Zex," she admitted, "but you're the Zexiest man I've ever met. I fell in love with you the day I started working for you." She caressed my face, speaking softly. "I meet lots of guys at school, but they're so immature. You're different. And I love that about you." I kissed her gently, then carried her to bed where we cuddled. "John, I love this peaceful feeling after being close to you," she said, giggling. "I hope you can dance as well as you love." "Dance?" "Yes, I love dancing. I used to teach at Arthur Murray. I always dreamed of marrying a tall, strong, handsome man who'd dance with me into the sunset." "Well, 3 out of 4 isn't bad," I joked. She smiled. "Honestly, I'll skip the dancing for your love. I can't live without that." As I thought about what we needed to arrange, marriage license, honeymoon, where we'd live, Debbie grinned knowingly. "You're thinking about a solution, aren't you? I can help." I told her my thoughts, and she smiled. Don't worry, I have it all planned. Go back to sleep. I tried to relax, but my mind was racing. She snuggled up to me and, with a soft smile, whispered, I love you so much. We can solve any problem together. I never want to sleep without you again. Do you have room for Dolly and me at your place? Yes, I live in a 3-bedroom condo. We can move you in today. She kissed my cheek and said, problem solved. Now, I need to brush my teeth for a real kiss. When she returned, wrapped in a towel, she grabbed a small notebook and slid back into bed. She flipped through it and showed me a page titled Marriage Information, which listed everything we needed to know. Addresses, phone numbers, and even things like banking and insurance. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Since I first met you, she giggled. I couldn't sleep last night, so I got up and made the list. Give in to your urges, I teased. I love it. Everything went smoothly. We got married in my office that Monday with Debbie, Dolly, a notary, and a few witnesses. Dolly was thrilled, wanting me to hold her constantly, and Debbie held my other arm. I couldn't have been happier. Debbie also trained a young man, Jeff, to take over her day-to-day tasks. He was athletic and about 30, which made me a bit uneasy, but I said nothing. The next morning, I noticed Debbie spending a lot of time with Jeff. I visited Joanne in the secretarial pool and asked for a new assistant. She smiled knowingly and said, I've got just the right person. She'll be in your office tomorrow, ready to help. That afternoon, I went to check on some new wall section drawings for a building I was designing. When I returned to my office near closing time, I found Debbie showing Jeff how the intercom system worked. Carrying Dolly, I said, Hi, Debbie. Dolly and I are ready to go. We'll be waiting in the atrium. Debbie quickly grabbed her jacket, looking adorable in her outfit. She had lost weight and was looking great. I decided she needed a shopping spree. As we headed out, she asked where we were going, but I told her she'd find out soon. When we arrived at a high-end department store, her eyes widened. We got Dolly settled in her stroller, and a shopper's assistant named Jane greeted us. I explained that my wife needed a new wardrobe, including business attire, casual clothes, and lingerie, and handed Jane a budget of $5,000. Debbie protested, Don't I get a say in this? I smiled. You pick what you like, and I'll tell you if I like it. But you're getting a new wardrobe. Tomorrow's Dolly's turn. The assistant grinned and led Debbie away. After 2 hours, I was dozing off with Dolly asleep in my arms when Debbie kissed me awake. We're done for now, and we'll return tomorrow. I got so much for under $2,500. Back home, we unloaded 4 loads of boxes into Debbie's dressing room, and I helped unpack. We ordered Chinese for dinner, and Dolly loved the fortune cookies. When she handed me one, I read, Your daddy will take you shopping for dresses tomorrow. Dolly's eyes lit up. Is that for me? She asked excitedly. The next day, both Debbie and Dolly got lots of new clothes. That evening, Debbie showed me her favorite shopping site, and I let her spend an additional $1,000 on summer outfits. She looked amazing in everything she modeled, and her happiness made it all worth it. After Dolly went to bed, I pulled Debbie into my lap, and we kissed. I suggested, maybe it's time to call your mom and tell her about us. Debbie thought for a moment and then agreed. She called her mom, reconnecting after 3 years, and shared the news about Dolly and our marriage. They spoke for over an hour. After the call, Debbie, with fresh tears in her eyes, jumped into my lap and kissed me passionately. Thank you, John. That was the right thing to do. Mom and Uncle Bill were so happy. They want us to visit soon. Where do they live? I asked. Melrose, Florida, less than an hour away. I smiled. How about we visit on Sunday? She agreed, and after putting Dolly to bed, I went to kiss her goodnight. As I approached Dolly's door, I overheard Debbie softly praying with her, asking God to bless their loved ones and keep them safe. Dolly added, And Daddy too. Debbie smiled. Yes, sweetie, Daddy most of all. We love him the most. I entered and hugged both of them. Dolly reached for me and I picked her up, hugging and kissing her. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, sweetie. Sleep well. Tears filled my eyes as she said, I love Mommy and Daddy as much as I can. She was so sweet, and I loved my girls deeply. The next morning, while I made breakfast, Debbie called her mom. She smiled as she told me, We're all set for Sunday. On Saturday, our shopping trip was focused on finding outfits for the visit. Both Debbie and Dolly picked matching denim skirts, black turtlenecks, and denim jackets. Dolly wore tights and boots, while Debbie opted for leggings and heeled boots. They both looked adorable. I wore jeans, a blue shirt, and a navy blazer. Debbie guided me to her family's large home. As we pulled up, her mother and Uncle William greeted us warmly. While Debbie and her mom embraced, I introduced myself to Uncle William and introduced Dolly, who curtsied sweetly. Uncle William, with tears in his eyes, picked Dolly up to introduce her to her grandmother. But when her grandmother reached out, Dolly clung to me, scared. I quietly reassured her, explaining that her mom's tears when talking about her mother were from missing her, not fear. Slowly, Dolly felt reassured and allowed her grandmother to hug her, breaking the tension. We moved inside, and Dolly quickly warmed up to her grandmother. Debbie smiled at me, love in her eyes. Uncle William and I started talking, and he recognized me from a past business meeting. We ended up chatting about work, and he admitted his regret over pushing Debbie to have an abortion, calling it his biggest mistake. I laughed and told him, "Debbie is a determined, intelligent woman. She's turned my business around in just a few months. Production and profits are up, and everyone loves working with her." As the afternoon progressed, Granny asked if Dolly could stay with her for a few days, but Debbie and I agreed she was still too young. Truthfully, I wasn't ready to let her go just yet. Dolly spent half her time in daycare and the other half with us, becoming a beloved presence at the office. Debbie was an active manager, visiting every office daily, always asking questions and expecting solutions. Her smile lit up the office, and her praise was cherished by everyone, but a frown from her was deeply felt. One day, Debbie noticed the new secretary at her old desk and entered my office, frowning. She asked, "How's the new girl working out?" "She's fine," I joked, "but she doesn't kiss as well as you." Debbie teared up, and I quickly reassured her, "I'm just teasing. You and Dolly have all my kisses forever." Her smile returned, and she playfully asked, "What about hugs?" "Those too," I laughed. "That might change," she teased, hinting at future babies. Later, I saw Jeff checking out Debbie while she worked, and it bothered me. Later that day, I overheard Jeff in the restroom bragging to a coworker about his intentions to pursue Debbie. Furious, I called Debbie into my office and asked her to fire Jeff. She was surprised, but didn't argue. A few hours later, Debbie confirmed she had fired him, and we headed home together. On the way home, Debbie asked, "Aren't you going to ask if I fired Jeff?" I smiled. "Why wouldn't you?" She explained that one of the workers told her Jeff was spreading rumors about them. "Good call," I said, suggesting we promote the worker who gave her the tip. That night, as we prepared for dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jeff pointing a weapon at me. He demanded to see his daughter, claiming Dolly was his. Debbie calmly corrected him, saying he was mistaken, and explained that Dolly wasn't his child. Jeff, confused, realized he had mixed Debbie up with someone else. As Jeff's attention shifted entirely to Debbie, I saw my chance. I quickly punched him in the head, and he dropped, the weapon hitting the floor. I grabbed the revolver just as Debbie rushed over and kicked him hard in the groin, screaming at him. She kicked him in the head and face, yelling until a deputy arrived and pulled her back. Soon, several deputies were in the apartment. Jeff was handcuffed, and we learned that the pizza delivery guy had seen Jeff with the weapon and called the police. After checking on Dolly, who was sound asleep, we gave statements. Jeff was charged with attack and several other crimes. Afterward, we sat down to eat but barely touched our food, mostly holding each other. Debbie, still in shock, said, "I don't even remember seeing him before he worked for us." I suggested she might have blocked the memory to avoid reliving the trauma of her attack. She nodded, unsure if she had ever seen his face clearly. Then she noticed my swollen hand. "We need to get ice on that," she said, bringing a bowl to help. She complimented me on how I handled Jeff, distracting him. I joked about how her ballet slippers were a better choice than stilettos. Otherwise, she might have done real damage. Debbie got serious, saying, "No one threatens my family," and walks away unscathed. That night, I suggested we both get concealed weapon permits and look into self-defense training. Debbie knew of a place near Melrose for martial arts training and said she would set it up. The next morning, after a restless night with my hand bandaged, Debbie mentioned she had already signed us up for a weapon safety course at a local shop. She surprised me by sharing how much experience she had with firearms, thanks to her Uncle Bill, who had taught her to shoot various weapons. Later, I showed Debbie my hidden weapon locker, letting her pick one for the class. She chose a small .22 revolver, smiling and saying she used to shoot one like it. She also picked up a Walther PPK in .380, saying it reminded her of her uncle's weapon. Debbie shared an old lesson from her father. "It doesn't matter the caliber if you strike the target in the right place. A miss with a bigger weapon is still a miss. I agreed, saying accuracy is key, no matter the weapon. We left work early, dropped Dolly off at Grandma's, and headed to the martial arts center. After discussing our experience and concerns about having a toddler, the owner recommended a self-defense baton, disguised as a flashlight. A quick wrist flick extended it to 21 inches. He offered a 1-hour class, which we signed up for, and we bought 2 batons. Next, we went to the weapon shop for our concealed weapons course. Deb practiced with both weapons and preferred the Walther PPK, becoming skilled at hitting the target consistently. She bought a clip-on holster and a few stylish purses designed to hold the PPK. I chose my Smith & Wesson .40 caliber, purchasing a fanny pack holster. We picked up our study materials and left. At Grandma's, Uncle Bill showed me a homemade self-defense tool, a piece of rebar with nuts attached, and explained how it could be used for protection while looking harmless. I complimented his ingenuity. After the incident with Jeff, I upgraded our home security with hidden cameras and took Debbie to the shooting range several times. I taught her to shoot through a purse, simulating a real-life scenario where she couldn't pull the weapon out first. After some practice, she mastered it, even hitting targets from different positions and distances. Debbie became proficient at point shooting and impressed everyone at the range. She could rapid-fire 6 shots, all hitting the target. She was concerned about ruining her purse, but made adjustments to use it for training. I joked that if she were in an evening gown with a tiny clutch, she'd need my protection. She replied, "I always look to you for protection. You're my hero." The weapon shop owner watched Debbie's progress and remarked on her impressive skills. We both passed our written test and received our concealed carry permits. We kept practicing at the range, with Debbie becoming extremely accurate at close range, consistently scoring well. Debbie loved stopping by the range to practice, and her shooting skills and grace on the line attracted attention. She quickly became a standout, impressing everyone, including the range master. One day, she took on a challenge to shoot at 2 targets on either side, hitting them flawlessly within 4 seconds. The range master praised her, noting that she learned well to keep her weapon functional during critical moments. After a few more rounds, we left, but it was clear Debbie had become an impressive shooter, admired by all. We also bought her several holster purses, including a small clutch that could eject the pistol directly into her hand when needed. Debbie often dressed in a way that turned heads, with high heels, short skirts, and sexy tops, and she knew I didn't mind others admiring her. It was fun for both of us. One afternoon, she came into my office, closed the door, and climbed into my lap. She kissed me and said, "I've stopped taking the pill, and I want us to take a week-long vacation. Mama and Uncle Bill can watch Dolly. She's comfortable with them now." I smiled and told her to plan it. Debbie excitedly shared, "We're going to Grand Cayman, staying at a clothing-optional resort." I laughed and asked about the cost. She reassured me it wasn't much and that she was mostly packed. Our vacation was great, though our experience in the clothing-optional section didn't go as planned. After relaxing on the beach, we woke up to a small crowd watching us. A man approached, offering Debbie a role in an adult film, boasting it would make her big money. I stood up and told him, "She's a CEO making $9,000 a week. You'd have to beat that." The man was stunned. Later, back in our room, Debbie teased me, asking if she could star in the movie. I played along but made it clear I wouldn't allow it. We laughed about it, but she admitted she couldn't do that anyway. "I'd never let another man touch me," she said seriously. We kept the conversation light, teasing each other about the bizarre encounter. However, after some playful back and forth, Debbie joked about my size compared to the guy on the beach, which stung a bit more than I expected. Needing space, I left the room and wandered the resort, lost in thought. Eventually, I overheard Debbie talking to the man from the beach. He warned her that teasing a man about his size could have lasting damage. I listened, pained, as he explained how such remarks could ruin a relationship. Debbie cut him off, clearly worried, and hurried to find me. When she saw me sitting nearby, she ran into my arms, tears forming. We went back to our room, but I was still upset. As I undressed, she asked with concern if my frustration was because of her teasing. I sighed, admitting that her comment had hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Debbie's face crumpled with tears, trying to explain through her sobs. I gently calmed her down and told her I overheard the conversation with the corn guy. Her eyes were still wet as she asked again if I was okay. "I'll do my best with my inferior equipment," I joked, blending humor with vulnerability. Debbie hugged me tightly, and after that, the misunderstanding between us seemed to lift. We never saw the guy again. The rest of our honeymoon was relaxing, and we made love often. Leaving Grand Cayman was bittersweet, but we were excited to return to Dolly, whom we called every day. When we got home, Dolly ran to us, screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, I missed you!" She jumped into Debbie's arms while I watched, moved by their reunion. As I gathered our gifts, Dolly shouted, "Where's Daddy?" I scooped her up and we all hugged together, crying tears of joy. Debbie's mom and Uncle Bill told us Dolly had been wonderful while we were away, and that she was always welcome to stay with them. Dolly clung to us, saying, "Don't leave me again for a long time," and we promised we wouldn't. Back at work on Monday, Deb and her team had narrowed down candidates for a new engineer position. They hired 2 top contenders, Betty Johnson, a sharp young assistant professor, and Jamal Washington, a well-qualified and personable engineer. A couple of months after our honeymoon, Deb sat me and Dolly down at the kitchen table. She held our hands and smiled, telling us she had news from the doctor. I immediately feared the worst, but Deb reassured me with a laugh. "We're going to have a new family member soon," she said. Dolly excitedly guessed we were getting a puppy, but Debbie smiled and told her she was going to have a little brother or sister. Overjoyed, I scooped Dolly into my arms, spinning her around the kitchen as we both cheered, "Mama's going to have a baby." Debbie watched, laughing through happy tears. We gathered around her, hugging and kissing, overwhelmed with love and joy. As I looked out the window, trying to collect myself, the weight of becoming a father again hit me. I turned back, hugged Debbie, and whispered, "Thank you for this precious gift." Debbie, eyes shining, whispered back, "This will be our child, a melding of the 2 of us." Dolly, ever curious, asked if we could get a puppy next time. Debbie laughed, explaining she was 2 months along and that it would be a while before she started to show. She then asked if I would attend birthing classes with her. "Of course," I said. "I'll go anywhere with you, my love." She rested her head on my chest, and we talked about the months ahead. 7 more months of waiting, and then we would welcome a new addition to our family. As I looked at the little girl in front of us, my mind raced with worry. How would Debbie's small frame handle carrying our baby? I was bigger than Jeff, Dolly's biological father. What if the baby was too big, or if she had twins? I hadn't thought about this before, and now I feared for her safety. Debbie noticed my concern. "What's wrong, honey?" she asked gently. I pulled her close and whispered my fears. She reassured me that women's bodies are built to handle larger babies and modern medicine would address any complications. "That's why I go for prenatal care," she said. "The doctor monitors everything. If necessary, they can induce labor or perform a C-section." I still wasn't completely convinced. "Not for you," I muttered, worried. Sensing the tension, Dolly asked, "What's wrong, Mommy? Why is Daddy crying?" Debbie smiled, brushing Dolly's hair. "Daddy's just being silly. He doesn't know how babies come out of Mommy's tummy. He's afraid it will hurt me." Dolly, with childlike innocence, said, "That's silly, Daddy. Mommy said it hurts a little, but mommies love their babies, so they don't mind." Debbie grinned at me and we all hugged. Months passed and Debbie's belly began to show. She was glowing, happier than ever, and said this pregnancy was better than her first, because this time she wasn't alone. She had a loving husband, and everyone around her was supportive. One afternoon, Debbie, 7 months along, went to the bank while Dolly and I waited in the car. Suddenly, I heard fire shots. I grabbed my pistol and saw Debbie on the curb exchanging fire with 3 men. 2 were down, and the car lurched toward her. I fired at the driver, and the car crashed into a tree. Panicking, I rushed to Debbie, relieved to find her unhurt. We barely had time to catch our breath before more shots rang out from inside the bank. I started toward the bank, but Debbie grabbed my arm. "I'm coming with you," she insisted. Together, we approached the shattered glass doors. Inside, a man held a woman hostage. I took a shot, knocking him in the head, and he dropped. As I moved to check on the woman, another robber rose behind a desk. Debbie fired 2 quick shots, taking him down. After the police arrived, we handed over our weapons and were praised for saving lives. Debbie, calm but shaken, joked about ruining her pantyhose and purse. We headed home, exhausted and overwhelmed by the day's events. Later, we saw ourselves on the news as the heroic husband and wife team who stopped the robbery. The reality of the situation hit us hard, and we both cried, realizing how close we had come to losing each other. The sheriff visited us the next morning to review security footage that captured everything. Watching it unfold again was surreal. Debbie had been calm and precise, taking down 2 of the robbers without missing a shot. The sheriff was amazed and praised her skills, saying, "Not many deputies could have done what you did." He invited us to a press conference, and though we were exhausted, we agreed. Debbie blushed at the attention, but humbly said, "I was just doing what I had to do." The sheriff smiled. "Well, you did it perfectly. You two make quite the team." The following months were a whirlwind of media attention. Debbie was flooded with offers for interviews, talk shows, and product endorsements, from hair products to diapers. I had to step in to ensure she wasn't overwhelmed, limiting her activities, especially as her due date approached. I restricted any plans for the week before and 3 weeks after the baby was born, even limiting her communication to just family and close friends. Despite my efforts, Debbie insisted on working right up until she went into labor. She continued managing her work, though I had her hold meetings in her office instead of walking around. Jamal Washington was always her first appointment in the mornings, which started to irritate me. One day, she mentioned visiting a few offices and asked if I'd watch Johnny. I suggested she keep having her meetings in her office, but she looked confused. "I like to visit each office and see how things are going firsthand," she said. "Who do you see first?" I asked casually. "Jamal, of course," she replied. "Why doesn't he report to Marty or Betty?" I asked. She paused, thinking. "I'm not sure. That's just how it's been." "I don't like it," I said. "He should be reporting to his boss, not you." Debbie considered my words, then smiled. "I'll take care of it," she said. I was relieved. "Good. Keeps things in the proper chain of command, and no one will think he's getting special treatment." Debbie raised an eyebrow. "Including you?" "Yep," I said, smiling. Debbie playfully flipped me off and laughed. "Oh, stop it." Months later, we held our company's annual beach party at my property near Daytona. It was an adults-only event, so Dolly and Johnny stayed with Grandma. The party was a hit, but I noticed Jamal was always around Debbie, and it started bothering me. It seemed like she was avoiding me, and my frustration grew. Betty, who was helping with the food, noticed my mood. "What's wrong?" she asked. I sighed. "I need a walk to clear my head," I muttered. I wandered along the beach, my mind racing with doubts. Could Debbie be interested in Jamal? I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. After some time, I sat on a log, lost in thought, when I heard voices and saw Debbie approaching with Betty. "Are you just going to sit there until the water reaches you?" Debbie asked. "I don't know," I muttered, still staring at the ocean. Debbie knelt beside me. "Betty told me you were upset about Jamal and me. John, I love only you. There's nothing between Jamal and me, and there never will be. You're stuck with me forever." I looked at her, confused and hurt. "But you spend so much time with him. What am I supposed to think?" Debbie sighed. "I've been helping him through a rough time. He's in love with someone, and it's tearing him up because they don't love him back." "Who is he in love with?" I asked. Debbie hesitated, then said softly, "You." I froze. "Me?" I asked, stunned. Debbie nodded. "Yes, John. He's admired you since he started working for us. He's not interested in me. He's been spending time with me to be near you." I was shocked. It all started to make sense, the way Jamal acted around me, but I had misread it completely. "I feel like a fool," I admitted. Debbie squeezed my hand. "Don't. It's normal to feel the way you did, but now you know the truth." "So what do we do now?" I asked. Debbie thought for a moment. "We'll talk to Jamal. He's done a great job, but he'll need to report to Marty or Betty from now on. It will keep everything clear." I nodded, relieved. "That sounds like the right plan." Debbie smiled. "And you won't have to worry about me spending too much time with him anymore." I chuckled. Thank God for that. We returned to the party where Betty was waiting. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah, better than ever," I said. Debbie grinned. "We've sorted everything out. Jamal will report to Marty from now on." Betty smiled. "That's good to hear." Later after the party, Debbie and I sat together at home. "This made me realize something," she said. "What's that?" I asked. "I need to be better at communicating with you. I should have told you about Jamal sooner." I kissed her head. "And I should have spoken up instead of letting it bother me." She smiled. "We've learned now." "Yes, we're in this together," I agreed. That night as we went to bed, I held her close, grateful for the love and trust we shared. Everything was back where it needed to be.
One evening, I sat at our table going through my daughter Katie's medical forms. Katie was preparing to start kindergarten, so she had a thorough checkup from the pediatrician. Meanwhile, my wife left her school forms spread out on the table. Glancing lazily at them, I noticed a letter that marked the end of my marriage. In the blood type column, it read A. I froze for about 10 seconds, utterly clueless. I then went to the cabinet and fetched 2 sheets of paper from our medical records. Everything matched my recollection perfectly. Last summer, both my wife and I donated blood to the Red Cross, receiving receipts indicating our blood type. Here they were on 2 sheets of paper. Mine was B, hers was O. So Katie couldn't possibly be my daughter. If my wife was her mother and I witnessed Marie giving birth, then someone with blood type A had to be the father. The kids were already asleep, and Marie was upstairs watching TV. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat in the backyard contemplating the state of my marriage. I'd say it was okay, pretty average, with its fair share of ups and downs. When we were dating and in the early stages of marriage, Marie and I were deeply in love. We were carnal all the time, sometimes passionately, even outside of the bedroom. We were always touching, holding hands, walking side by side, caressing each other as we passed by. Naturally, over time, that faded. Isn't that how it goes in most marriages? But now, faced with undeniable proof of her infidelity, everything I thought about our marriage was shaken. I pondered, what changed? Was it gradual or sudden? It felt like both. The decline in our closeness was gradual initially. However, about 6 years ago, a few months before Katie was conceived, things took a strange turn. Marie, typically warm and loving, started acting oddly. One evening, she came home from work very late, allowed me a brief tender kiss, then hurried to the shower and avoided me for the rest of the night. The next morning was just as chilly and distant. But that night, she was a different person entirely. She came home early, cooked a special dinner, tucked me into bed early, and made love to me with a fervor and passion I thought we'd lost. We cuddled happily before sleep, and Marie expressed her love for me. Several times that week, we shared passionate moments. Then, the coldness returned abruptly. She arrived late from work, didn't utter a word to me, and swiftly disappeared into the shower. For the next 2 months, I hardly recognized the woman I married. Marie was affectionate and distant, attentive and preoccupied, patient and irritable. I asked her numerous times if something was wrong, if there were issues between us or at work. Her only response was to express uncertainty to Bill, admitting that she might just be feeling a bit nervous and apologizing for it. When things eventually settled after about 3 months, it was far from the joyful beginning of our marriage. Marie became less moody, but she was rarely affectionate anymore, and her interest in closeness vanished. We made love no more than once a week, sometimes even less frequently, and only when I insisted firmly. Any gentle suggestion, like maybe we could be carnal tonight, was met with sharp rejection. I had to seriously address the long lapse since our last carnal moment. Marie would reluctantly engage in lovemaking afterward, making it evident she was merely obliging me. Is this dismal pattern common in all marriages? It was the only marriage I carnally knew, so I couldn't say. Naturally, I pondered what was happening, contemplating the possibility of infidelity. However, soon after, Marie became pregnant, and our shared excitement over our future baby and the joy of having our wonderful Katie overshadowed most of my concerns about our relationship. After Katie's birth, we were constantly exhausted, making Marie's disinterest in lovemaking more understandable, though still unsatisfactory to me. Then, when Katie turned 3, Marie became pregnant again, and we welcomed Brian just after Katie's 4th birthday. So Bill and Marie, once passionate lovers and spouses, transitioned into Bill and Marie, parents of 2 delightful, yet exhausting children. We both cherished our kids deeply. Despite my current realization of my profound unhappiness with our marriage and our nearly non-existent lovemaking life, I was oblivious to it at the time. If that was the case, then I concluded that all couples with young children experience this phase. With the startling revelation that my daughter wasn't biologically mine, the events of 6 years ago no longer seemed mysterious. Marie must have initiated an affair around that time. This explained her distant behavior and sudden rush to the shower. The subsequent passionate lovemaking and warmth could be attributed to guilt, or perhaps, if I were being generous, to her attempt to maintain the facade of a happy marriage while continuing the affair. As I sat in the yard, observing the night descend and the stars twinkle, my initial shock gave way to growing anger. Not only had my beloved wife betrayed me, but she had also deceived me into raising someone else's child, and perhaps more than one. If I were solely focused on punishing Marie at that moment, I would have stormed into the house, presented her with the evidence of blood types, coerced a confession, and cast her out onto the street. But it wasn't that simple. I cherished my children, regardless of their biological origins. If we were to divorce, Marie would likely gain sole custody once the truth about their parentage surfaced. I contemplated and asked myself, what do I truly desire? The answers became surprisingly clear. Firstly, I needed to uncover the truth about Marie's actions. Was it a fleeting affair? Was she unaware that Katie wasn't my biological child? Or did she know everything and carry on a clandestine relationship for years? Secondly, I was determined to raise my children as my own and shield them from the knowledge of my non-biological relationship to them. Once I delineated my objectives, devising a plan to achieve them seemed remarkably straightforward. I returned to the house and discreetly collected cotton swabs from each of the children's cheeks while they slept, labeling Katie's with a 2 and Brian's with a 3. Then I headed to the kitchen, swabbed my own cheek, and marked it with a 1. I had a friend who worked in a university chemistry lab, and I arranged for him to conduct DNA tests for me. This marked the initial step, the commencement of gathering crucial information. After receiving my initial response, I knew what to do next. A week later, my friend called me without knowing where the samples came from. I told him about meeting people with the same surname, leading to discussions about potential distant kinship. He then mentioned that Bill's 2 and 3 were siblings, but the first one wasn't related. This revelation indicated that they weren't cousins as previously assumed. I thanked him for the information and ended the call. Katie and Brian were siblings, sharing the same parents. Marie, on the other hand, had 2 children with an unknown partner. Did she have knowledge of this? She must have been aware of her relations with this individual, but was she cognizant of his paternity over our children? There was a straightforward means to ascertain the truth. Approaching Marie as she washed dishes in the kitchen, I brought up the topic without turning towards her. I began by telling her I had a question, and she encouraged me to continue. I explained the situation regarding my colleague's biologist friend needing DNA samples from relatives. I suggested that we obtain swabs from her, me, and each child, planning to handle the kids before bedtime and take care of ours later. I checked Marie's reaction closely as I spoke. In the middle of my explanation, she tensed, almost dropping a pan before composing herself. After I finished, there was a minute of silence before she turned to face me. Marie expressed her doubts about the idea, questioning how we could be certain about what the biologist would do with the samples, or if our privacy would be respected. Despite my attempts to argue, she firmly opposed the idea, insisting that she wasn't interested. She asked me to inform my colleague that we declined to participate. I replied softly, saying it was okay either way. Her reaction conveyed to me what I needed to know. My next step involved uncovering the truth about her affairs. Who, where, when, and perhaps why. Although uncertain, searching her home might yield clues. I required time for a thorough search. On Saturday, we planned to visit her parents. Minutes before departure, I pretended a work crisis, feigned a call, then explained the situation to Marie. She reluctantly agreed, departing with the children. Now, I had hours to comb through the house systematically. I deemed my usual haunts unnecessary to search, focusing instead on Marie's spaces. Skipping the kitchen, bookshelves, and living room, I ignored my own areas but meticulously combed through her closet and dresser. The discovery of hidden lingerie hinted at secrets. Only the children's rooms and the attic remained to explore. Concluding that the children's rooms were less promising, I ventured into the attic. Inside, I found assorted old furniture, a few lamps, and numerous boxes of items predating our marriage. Realizing the enormity of the task, I scrutinized the area. Notably, one of the 3 nearby boxes appeared less dusty and had been recently disturbed. Upon closer inspection, I focused on these 3 boxes and uncovered Marie's old belongings, mostly letters from her college days. Among them were letters and keepsakes from myself, including sweet greeting cards. Buried at the bottom of one box, concealed beneath old papers, lay a thin stack of recent notes and 2 unmarked videotapes. Extracting them, I discovered the tapes contained explicit content, while the notes were from Harry, her office superior, expressing overtly closeness sentiments. After scrutinizing the materials for 20 minutes, it became evident that Marie had betrayed me with Harry, beginning around 3 months before our daughter Katie was conceived, coinciding with Marie's peculiar behavior at home. The notes revealed a dynamic characterized by Harry's dominance and Marie's compliance, devoid of affection. They dictated her attire for various occasions and detailed their carnal encounters during late work hours. Some even ridiculed me for unknowingly raising their children. It was apparent Harry had no intention of acknowledging their paternity. My anger intensified as I realized the extent of Marie's deception, knowing Harry was happily married to Caroline, unaware of his affair. Although Marie seemed to willingly participate, there was no indication of coercion. She appeared to relish her submissive role. They both appeared to know the paternity of Marie's children and seemed to enjoy their secret over me. These revelations confirmed Marie's deceit over the past 6 years, deliberately conceiving children from another man while masquerading as my devoted wife. Filled with rage, I resolved to seek revenge on both Marie and Harry. After a brief moment of contemplation, I brought the tapes to the VCR and watched footage of Harry and Marie engaging in carnal acts. The setting of the earlier recording, likely Harry's house, and the more recent one in our bedroom, raised suspicions about Marie's opportunities during my business trips. Overall, the recordings affirmed Harry's closeness dominance over Marie and her eager compliance. The room's lighting wasn't particularly bright, but both figures were clearly visible, and the sound quality was surprisingly clear, allowing me to catch every word and moan on the initial tape. From the outset of their affair, I heard Harry assuming control. Seated on the bed, he directed Marie to perform a provocative strip-tease, which she did with a smile. The closeness was rough, lacking tenderness or affection, and Harry spoke harshly to her. It saddened me to observe that Marie evidently enjoyed the encounter. The second tape featured similar carnal scenes, but included some fresh, intriguing dialogue as they reclined on the bed. Marie queried Harry about his indifference to me raising his children, to which he responded that I was a decent guy who loved children, and he didn't worry beyond that. He mentioned that if it weren't for that, he would advise her to leave me. Marie retorted by questioning what I was good for besides changing diapers. She expressed to Harry that it wasn't fair. Marie defended me, highlighting my kindness and love, comparing them to Harry's treatment. She hinted at being drawn to Harry's roughness because it contrasted with my gentleness. Despite this, they proceeded with their encounter before Harry's departure. Upon completing both viewings, I pondered their arrogance, not only in creating such evidence, but also in foolishly leaving it along with Harry's notes where I could find them. My retaliation would be comprehensive, targeting both of them. I utilized a scanner to digitize each note onto my hard drive. Then, using software borrowed from work for a previous project, I converted each videotape into a digital file on my hard drive for future editing. Once finished, I stashed the records and tapes in the trunk of my car, concealing them under the spare tire. I then meticulously tidied up the attic, ensuring Marie remained oblivious to my presence. Over the following 2 weeks, I methodically executed my plans. It was much easier than I anticipated to feign normalcy with Marie, acting as if nothing unusual had occurred. It struck me that she had deceived me for 6 years, making it easier for me to reciprocate. Despite lacking any desire for her, I continued to act affectionately, even initiating closeness, albeit cautiously, to make it easier for her to refuse. I truly had no desire to touch her ever again. An important event loomed in Marie's life. She had been elected as the new president of the Key Society, a significant charity in our city, and was set to officially assume office at a luncheon where she would deliver a speech outlining the charity's plans for the upcoming year. Marie had served on the Key Society board for 3 years and felt greatly honored to be named president. Nervous about her presentation, she asked for my assistance in preparing the PowerPoint portion she intended to use. This presented me with a golden opportunity. For about a week, I collaborated with her every evening, allowing her to share her slides and other materials with me, organizing them into a cohesive presentation. She rehearsed this several times in the month leading up to her big day, and it always went smoothly. Concurrently, I prepared my own entirely different PowerPoint presentation, ready to replace hers. The night before the luncheon, I deleted Marie's file and substituted it with mine, adding a lock to prevent her from disabling it once the presentation began. All I needed to ensure was that Mary had extended an invitation to Harry and his wife for dinner. I casually inquired, and she confirmed they would attend on that significant evening. I shared Marie's excitement, though for different reasons. Arriving early, Marie, elegantly clad in a black evening gown, looked stunning. I assisted her in setting up the laptop, conducting a couple of tests to ensure smooth playback. We all relished a fine dinner and some initial speeches. Marie was then warmly introduced by the outgoing president, and she approached the podium with a blend of timidity and pride. As applause erupted, she commenced her speech and launched the PowerPoint presentation. Initially, it unfolded as expected, showcasing images of the society's key charitable endeavors and financial breakdowns. Then, as per my scheme, it abruptly shifted focus. A sequence of still photos followed, frames I extracted from 2 videos depicting a couple engaged in various carnal acts. While some images were dim, the collective impression of a dozen or so unmistakably featured Marie and Harry. For a few minutes, Marie continued addressing key social issues. Then, amid a sudden stir among the audience, she turned to the screen behind her. Gasping, she inadvertently knocked over a glass of water onto the podium, momentarily frozen in shock. Soon, a vivid blush spread across her face and neck as she frantically tried to halt the presentation. By then, still photos had transitioned into brief video clips. Harry's voice rang out as he questioned how they would prevent me from discovering that she was carrying his child. He mentioned that, as long as she allowed me occasional closeness, I wouldn't suspect anything. He added that she should remember that she belonged to him. The room erupted in laughter and jeers from all corners. Marie stood transfixed, utterly dumbfounded, and too stunned to even feel embarrassed. At a nearby table, Caroline, Harry's wife, seized a vase of flowers, smashed it over Harry's head, and exited amidst the commotion. As people gradually vacated the ballroom, they cast glances back at Marie, gesturing and reliving the astonishing spectacle. Surprisingly swiftly, Marie and I were left alone. She stood on the podium, defeated and desolate. Sitting at a table 10 feet away, I grinned broadly as I looked up at her. Eventually, she met my eyes, wearing an expression of profound sorrow. She questioned how I could betray her and stated that she thought I loved her, which struck me as amusing given the circumstances. I burst into laughter and made my exit, denying any remaining love for her. It wasn't like that at all. It was a delightful fantasy, but entirely implausible. I realized that the entire town would soon learn of Harry's paternity, which could jeopardize my custody of the children in the divorce. Additionally, they would resent being labeled as Marie's illegitimate offspring. I acknowledged that I should have been more subtle in my approach. Taking the initiative, I consulted a divorce attorney and collaborated with them multiple times to draft documents for future use. I then created the exact PowerPoint presentation I had described earlier, but instead of waiting for Marie's dinner event, I presented it to her. One evening, 4 weeks prior to the dinner, after putting the children to bed, I summoned Marie and asked her to review the draft of the PowerPoint I had prepared for her upcoming speech the next month. She snapped, questioning if it could wait because she was exhausted that day. Firmly, I asserted that it couldn't wait, reminding her that I needed to review what changes were necessary so I could make them in time. I mentioned that I did all of this for her in my spare time. I then ushered her into the office and seated her in front of the computer. Instructing her to hit the letter A when she was ready, I told her that the file would start on its own, inwardly smiling. I observed her closely. Initially, everything proceeded smoothly as she rehearsed her remarks on the first few slides of the society's presentation. Then she gasped, her face draining of color as she beheld still images of her and Harry engaged in closeness. Turning to me, mouth agape, she remained silent. I met her gaze impassively. Soon video clips surfaced, featuring conversations about his paternity of her children and her deception of me. As more scenes unfolded, Marie frantically attempted to halt the file, but I thwarted her efforts. Eventually, the screen went dark. This ordeal lasted about 2 minutes. Marie slumped in her chair, head bowed, unable to meet my gaze. After a moment, she finally spoke, lifting her head to look at me. In that instant, she seemed to age 20 years. "Bill, Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I'm truly sorry. Can you ever forgive me?" "Forgive you?" I retorted coldly. "For what?" "Let's see. For having an affair with Harry Dorner, which apparently spanned our entire 6-year marriage. For bearing him 2 children while leading me to believe they were mine. For mocking me and disrespecting me behind my back. For denying me closeness at Harry's behest. Is that what you want forgiveness for?" Her sobs intensified. "Bill, I don't love him. You're the one I love. The one I've always loved." My anger simmered, restrained. I said nothing, but internally I thought, "No, Marie, that's nonsense. You love our lifestyle. You appreciate how I cater to your needs, care for the children, but you don't love me. No woman who loves her husband would behave so deceitfully." I reclined, allowing her tears to flow. I relished her distress, maintaining silence during the 20 minutes it took for her to cry. Eventually, she sniffled several times, wiped her face, and looked at me. "What will you do, Bill? Are you going to divorce me?" "No, Marie, I won't," I lied. "I care too much about Katie and Brian, even if they aren't biologically mine." I let the words linger before continuing. "But things will change drastically from now on. You can count on that. Let's begin immediately. Call that idiot Harry and tell him to be here in 15 minutes. She stared at me, horror evident on her face. "But I can't do that. He's at home with his wife and kids. He won't come." I grinned. "Say whatever you must, but get him here. Let him know if he doesn't show up within 15 minutes. His marriage will be over by tomorrow." She hesitated, perhaps unsettled by the coldness in my demeanor. Without uttering another word, she headed to the kitchen and dialed her lover. When Harry arrived, he wore the insincere smile I anticipated. Marie must have briefed him on the situation, for he appeared anxious and apprehensive. "Come into the office and take a seat, Harry. And you too, Marie. We have something to discuss," I directed. As we settled, I wasted no time. "Okay, Harry, here's the deal. You've been enjoying yourself with Marie for quite some time, making me out to be a fool. That ends now. Everything has changed, and it's time for you to face the consequences." He began to respond, but I silenced him. "Sit, watch, and listen." I scrolled through the PowerPoint presentation and relished his horrified reaction to its contents. When the presentation ended, a prolonged, unexpected silence ensued. Strangely, I found myself enjoying it more than they did. "Now you'll do exactly as I say without question, or your seemingly blissful marriage to Caroline will abruptly and publicly come to an end. Understand? Don't speak. Just nod," I instructed. He begrudgingly nodded, his expression seething with anger. "Good. Listen carefully and keep quiet. I have several documents for you to sign. I'll give them to you one by one. You may want your lawyer to review them, so I'm giving you 48 hours to return them signed. Otherwise, Caroline will be invited to view a brief video clip. The first document acknowledges that you are the biological father of Katie and Brian and commits you to pay child support until they turn 21, along with a lump sum for their college education. The amounts are specified here: $10,000 per child per year, plus $100,000 per child upon their first year of college. The funds will be placed in a trust fund, of which I am the sole trustee, with authority to utilize it for the children's needs," I explained. Harry erupted from his chair in fury. "Listen, Bill, this is utterly ridiculous. I have no intention—" I forcefully pushed him back into his seat. "Shut the hell up, Harry. You're wealthy and we both know it. This isn't your show anymore. It's mine and you have no choice. Now keep quiet until I give you permission to speak," I commanded. Across the room, I noticed Marie looking at me with a horrified expression. This was a side of her devoted husband she had never witnessed before. "The second document grants me permission to adopt the children. You and Marie will need to sign it. The third document entails your permanent renouncement of parental rights to Katie and Brian, pledging never to disclose your paternity to anyone. And lastly, a personal admission that you exploited my wife in the workplace, coercing her into an affair," I continued. "What?" Harry exploded once more. "That's a complete fabrication. She wanted it as much as I did." "Sit down, Harry," I commanded sternly. "Perhaps, but Marie will still file exploitation complaint against you. It's one of my conditions for not divorcing her." Do you understand, Marie? I asked, turning to her. She glanced fearfully between me and Harry, offering no response. Allow me to clarify, I said to both of them. I have no immediate plans to act on these documents. Consider them my insurance, Harry, in case you ever contemplate shirking your financial obligations to our children or suddenly decide to reveal their true parentage to others, I added, handing Marie the prepared exploitation complaint. Sign it, Marie, I instructed firmly. She complied silently, still appearing apprehensive. Now, Harry, we're nearly finished with your part in today's proceedings. I expect these documents back in my possession within 48 hours. You can deliver them here, and should you entertain any misguided thoughts, such as damaging me, rest assured, copies of your incriminating correspondence with Marie are securely stored, ready to surface if necessary, I concluded, gazing at him disdainfully. Any questions? Taking Marie's hand, I guided her back to the office and seated her. I had never witnessed her in such a state before. She trembled with horror. It's all right, Marie. I would never damage you. There's no need to be afraid, I assured her. God, Bill, what's gotten into you? How could you do this to Harry? She exclaimed. I regarded her with some surprise. You truly don't understand, Marie. Don't you realize that what he did to you, to us, is malicious and unjust? She blushed. Yes, of course. It's plain. Well, you're so furious. It's as if you've lost your mind, she continued. I remained silent for a moment, unsure how to respond. Marie, I've assured you I won't divorce you. However, our marriage will undoubtedly change drastically. Do you comprehend? I queried. Yes, Bill. I'll do whatever it takes to make amends. But what have I done to you? She pleaded. All right, I acquiesced. Let's establish a couple of conditions. Within 2 weeks, you'll secure a new job. I won't permit you to continue seeing Harry daily at work. It should be evident, but you are to have no further personal interaction with Harry. No touching, kissing, lovemaking, phone calls, emails, nothing, I outlined. Furthermore, if our marriage endures, it will be on a wholly different foundation. I refuse to tolerate your bad temper, coldness, and indifference. I expect you to be a cheerful, kind, and affectionate wife each day. Through your actions, demonstrate your love and appreciation for marrying me, forsaking the wild, uninhibited desirability you shared exclusively with Harry. I anticipate seeing you in the seductive lingerie you've kept hidden in your drawer. I expect you to be eager and willing when it comes to closeness. If you truly love me, Marie, you have a lot of lost time to compensate for, I asserted. She crossed the room and knelt before me, embracing my legs tightly. I love you, Bill, more than words can express, and I'll prove it to you, she declared tearfully. I observed her pale, tear-streaked face and fearful eyes. Somewhere within me lingered traces of the love and devotion I once felt for this woman with whom I shared so much. However, they were overshadowed, rendered insignificant by my resentment towards her selfishness and hypocrisy. She deserves whatever consequences come her way, I thought. Softening my tone, I said, Listen, Marie, in 4 weeks, your significant social dinner will occur. Let's utilize this time to start anew, to potentially improve our marriage. If all goes well, the dinner will be an opportunity to celebrate the success of our renewed efforts. Agreed? She nodded, tightening her embrace. Yes, Bill. Thank you for giving me a chance. I'll be whatever you want me to be. Drawing her closer, she showered me with kisses, promising to make amends. Give me 10 minutes to freshen up, and then I'll begin making things right, she pledged, rising with a smile. As she exited the room, I reclined in my chair, amused by Marie's efforts to please me. The next 4 weeks promised to be quite amusing. I was somewhat surprised she failed to notice what I refrained from doing. I refrained from discussing the affair's details or its origins. The entire evening must have been a profound shock for her, leaving no time for reflection. But truthfully, I didn't inquire because I simply didn't care. My relationship with Marie had concluded, though she remained unaware. Upon entering the bedroom a few minutes later, I found the bed neatly made, the lights dimmed, and Marie reclining on her side in a revealing red nightgown after attending to her grooming routine. She looked stunning, as beautiful as ever, yet noticeably nervous. I noticed a bottle of lubricant on the nightstand. In a seductive yet trembling voice, she asked where I was and beckoned me to come to her, extending her arms. I quickly disrobed and embraced her. Our kisses ignited passion. Her body exuded warmth, and she wriggled with anticipation. Whether playful or not, I relished the moment, setting aside my rage and disgust toward Marie to indulge in pleasure with her. Her allure and impatience were exhilarating, particularly after years of indifference. Surrendering to her lead, I lay back as she took charge. Afterward, she extinguished the light and nestled beside me under the blanket. She gently kissed my neck and bid me good night. As I drifted into contented sleep, I anticipated receiving similar attention over the next 4 weeks. I thoroughly enjoyed the subsequent weeks as Marie devoted herself to rebuilding our marriage. The next morning, she woke me with a cheerful smile and a loving kiss, offering pleasure before breakfast. I watched as she went beyond her usual routine to prepare the children for their day. That evening, she prepared an unusual meal from a cookbook, though the kids preferred their usual fare. Marie ensured they bathed and went to bed on time so we could enjoy our evening together. Our nightly closeness was a pleasant change from before. Marie wore another nightgown, and we indulged in leisurely lovemaking. Her enthusiasm, affection, and energy remained consistent. Despite my hidden feelings, I couldn't ignore the semblance of happiness we exuded daily. Marie's loving attention persisted, both in the mornings and behind closed doors. My life seemed like a happy fantasy, albeit with a lack of trust in my wife and simmering rage beneath my facade of contentment. Harry's signed papers arrived promptly, and I quickly obtained Marie's consent for adoption, finalizing the process through a private hearing arranged by my lawyer within 10 days. Then my attorney handled the divorce proceedings. One morning at work, I had a surprise visit from Denise Reynolds, a colleague I collaborate with occasionally. At 28, she was 5 years my junior, and truly stunning. While I knew she was divorced, and her occasional flirty remarks didn't go unnoticed, I never considered her beyond being one of the women I fantasized about. In your dreams, I anticipated Denise's visit to be work-related, but it turned out otherwise. "Bill," she said, "what's different about you lately? You seem, I don't know, younger or fitter or something." "Thanks for the compliment, Denise," I replied with a smile. Then, thinking, why not? I blurted out, "Actually something entirely different, but not suitable for discussion here. Maybe we can grab lunch together today." "Sounds good," she agreed. We headed to the salad bar, then took our lunches to a park table and enjoyed the sunshine. "The change you noticed in me is probably due to my failing marriage," I explained. She looked puzzled. "And that makes you look better? Please explain." I gave her a condensed version of the story. "A couple of weeks ago, I discovered my wife was having an affair with a coworker. It's been going on for a while. I confronted him to leave her alone, and since then, she's been bending over backwards to make it up to me. Here's a secret, Denise. Marie thinks she can win me back, but I've already decided I'll be leaving her in a few weeks. I can't stay with someone who betrayed me. In the meantime, she's treating me like a king, both in and out of the bedroom. That's the change you noticed today," I concluded, and she appraised me with a look. "I'm impressed you're handling it so well," she said. "When I found out my ex was cheating, I nearly fell apart. It took me months to get back on track." "I'm sorry," I offered. "I didn't know you went through that. But I've taken control of my situation now. It'll unfold the way I want, not someone else's way. That's making me feel a lot better." Taking another chance, I added, "One nice thing about my situation is that even though I'm not officially single yet, I know I will be soon. So, I don't have to hold back from expressing my admiration for the lovely lady sitting with me in the park today," I said, smiling at her. She blushed slightly, glanced away, then back at me. "Geez, Bill, you've put me in an awkward spot. I didn't think it was so straightforward," she said. "Sorry, Denise, but you're so beautiful and fun. I've been attracted to you since we met. It's just that until now, it was off limits to talk about it. Any chance you'll join me for dinner on Saturday? I know a charming Italian place with a river view." She looked at me seriously. "Bill, I like you too, and it's always been easy with you. Can I trust you? Is your marriage truly over? Or is this just some ploy to get into my pants? Excuse my skepticism, but I've seen this scenario before." "Denise, I've always been honest with you, and as you know, I've never pushed you before. I'm ending things with Marie in about 2 weeks and filing for divorce the same day. There's no going back. But I understand if you want to distance yourself. I'll just be a little disappointed." She smiled. "No, Bill. Now that you've made the offer, I'm ready to accept it before you change your mind." She gazed at me intently, and after a moment's hesitation, I leaned in and we shared a light, tender kiss. It wasn't fiery or passionate, but it felt like a beautiful promise. As we parted, I couldn't help but smile, feeling like a joyful child. When I informed my wife about my Saturday night date, it brought out a cruel side in me. I bluntly stated that I would be going out with another woman and expected her to stay home with the kids. Marie was taken aback and on the verge of tears. "Bill," she protested, "but I've been trying so hard. Please think of something to salvage our marriage. How can you see someone else?" "It's quite simple, Marie. Not only did you see someone else, but you also engaged in a 6-year-long affair behind my back. While you've been making an effort lately, and I'm feeling better, it doesn't mean you automatically deserve my unwavering devotion. It's clear that I'll need to seek enjoyment elsewhere for quite some time before we're on equal footing." Her tears began to flow. "Will you sleep with her?" "No, but I could. And that's what you need to comprehend. If it hurts you to think about, well, that's a taste of how you made me feel." With that, I exited the room, ending the conversation. My initial outings with Denise were delightful, yet cautious. We proceeded slowly. Perhaps both of us sensed there was more than just physical attraction between us. We conversed, laughed, commiserated about colleagues, exchanged childhood stories, and simply got to know each other. It felt effortless and natural, at times reminiscent of my early days with Marie. The thought saddened me, but I pushed it aside. Following our third dinner, as I opened Denise's car door outside her apartment, she softly asked if I would like to come in. We both understood the implication, and I felt an instant surge of desire. Once inside, she melted into my embrace, and we kissed and embraced like infatuated teenagers. Pulling back slightly, she confessed to me that she really wanted this, but was quite nervous because it had been a while. She asked me to be gentle and patient. I assured her with a smile, lifting her gently, and asked her which way to her bedroom. Later, I reflected that lovemaking with Denise was incredible but noticeably different from recent encounters with Marie. She started out a bit timid, allowing me to explore and caress her body. Yet, she was so stunning that every moment with her was pure pleasure. Our first carnal encounter was tender, affectionate, and far more loving than the passionate encounters I'd had with Marie. It felt like two people caring for each other, bringing each other happiness. Afterward, Denise kissed me repeatedly and asked if I could stay the night. I gladly agreed, and we fell asleep in each other's arms. The following morning, she seemed a bit bashful again, and while we didn't make love, we bid farewell with genuine tenderness, sharing several tender kisses. With just a few days remaining until my planned wedding night with Marie, I kept my intentions hidden from Denise, but mentioned that my divorce would soon be finalized. When I returned home around 9:30 on Saturday morning, I found Marie quietly weeping at the kitchen table, clearly aware of how I'd spent the previous night. Feigning sympathy more than I genuinely felt, I embraced her tenderly. "I'm sorry, Marie. I understand how you must feel," I murmured. "Oh, Bill, this is just awful. The mere thought of you with another woman tears me apart. I've been so selfish all these years. How could I have been so oblivious to your feelings?" Looking at me with gratitude, she whispered, "Thank you. Thank you for giving me another chance." Marie's significant night, much like mine, was rapidly approaching. To some extent, I almost lamented it. The past 4 weeks with Marie, marked by very satisfying closeness, were enjoyable, and I'll miss them. However, nothing she did even began to diminish my resentment and anger. Her utter betrayal far surpassed any attempts at reconciliation. When I examined my heart, there was only a tiny bit of love for her and a minuscule drop of sympathy for what awaited her. While collaborating on a PowerPoint presentation for her speech, I clandestinely prepared my own rendition, not precisely identical to hers, as I needed to conceal Harry's identity as the children's father. Nonetheless, the general approach mirrored hers, a sequence of photos followed by captivating videos. I rigged the laptop so that Marie's presentation would play whenever she used it. However, by inputting a specific key combination, including a passphrase, I could lock her presentation and substitute it with my unique file. In the days leading up to the event and on the evening itself, Marie anxiously asked if I had deleted the dreadful file she encountered 4 weeks ago. Each time, with a loving smile, I reassured her it was gone and demonstrated that her presentation was intact on the laptop. The last few days at home were particularly sweet. Marie began to feel more assured that she was winning me over again, and her affectionate gestures seemed less desperate, yet more serene. The pain she endured when I spent the entire night with Denise only elevated her further in our bed. Knowing that this charade was about to end, I savored every moment. When the big night arrived, we were there early, with me donning a rented tuxedo, and Marie looking glamorous in a black evening dress with spaghetti straps that accentuated her neck and shoulders. We ran her PowerPoint presentation twice to ensure everything was in order. As she leaned over to place her purse under the podium, I swiftly input the key combination, signaling that everything was set, and everything unfolded exactly as I anticipated. We enjoyed a pleasant dinner, engaging in friendly chatter with our companions at the table. Then, Marie was warmly introduced by the outgoing president, and she nervously approached the podium amid applause. According to my watch, her joy and anticipation lasted precisely 54 seconds. That's how long it took for the still photos of her infidelity to appear on the screen. Marie didn't freeze or spill her water, but she turned to me with horror and disbelief before futilely attempting to halt the presentation. Naturally, she failed. As the video clips played and the audience reacted with a mix of indignation and laughter, she stood there, flushed and defeated, making no attempt to respond to the vulgar remarks directed at her. Moments later, we were alone. I sat quietly, observing her from across the table. Finally, she uttered the question straight from my fantasy. "Bill, how could you do this to me? I thought you loved me." "Yes, Marie," I replied. "In these past few weeks, I loved you just as much as you loved me 6 years ago." Approaching the podium, I placed several folded papers in her hand. "I'm filing for divorce. Consider yourself served. If you remain in town, we'll have joint custody of Katie and Brian. Otherwise, I'll fight for full custody, and you know I'll win." Almost at the door, I heard her scream in anguish and fury. "But you promised you wouldn't divorce me. You said we could work things out." Turning back to face her, I responded, "Yes, Marie. So I suppose after all these years of your deceit, I lied to myself."
Travis Wesley experienced the most terrible day imaginable. It's not every day your beloved wife of 23 years tells you she's going out with other men, starting tonight. Travis sat quietly at the kitchen table, gripping a glass of monkey shoulder scotch. For 10 minutes, he didn't drink a drop of the amber liquid. He just sat there, staring ahead blankly, not really seeing or hearing anything, but definitely feeling a sharp ache within him. Travis knew no amount of Alka-Seltzer could relieve the pain gnawing at his stomach. He'd heard tales of other men's wives mentioning going out with other men, but he'd always dismissed it as nothing more than a city legend. How could a woman assume her devoted husband would accept her dating someone else? Other men? He couldn't fathom how a woman could be so callous towards her own husband, so blatantly selfish in her desires. This occurred on Monday, yet it was a pleasant day at Travis's workplace. He left around 5 in high spirits, whistling as he entered the house. Still feeling cheerful, he discovered his wife seated at the kitchen table, enjoying a glass of red wine and his favorite whiskey. Taking his usual spot, he set down his briefcase, poured 3 fingers of the liquid, and settled into his chair. "What's on your mind, Lauren?" Travis inquired, noting a sly grin on her face. She met his gaze squarely, her grin slightly mischievous. What he discerned in her eyes wasn't promising. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Do you reckon I've been a good wife and mother all these years, Trav?" she asked, completely composed. Travis furrowed his brow. Aware of his introspective nature, she could almost see the gears turning in his head before he replied, "Yes, I believe so." "And do you think I deserve some form of recognition for it?" she continued in the same impassive tone. Travis took a few more moments to ponder the question carefully. "So, should I expect a reward for doing what's expected of a good husband and father? Why are you even asking me this, Lauren?" he snapped irritably. "Travis, today I'd like to go out on a date with another man," she stated calmly, as serene as a lake on a perfect morning. Travis was grateful to be seated. He felt a surge of bile creeping up his throat. His mind was like an erased blackboard. utterly blank as he struggled to process her request to go on a date with another man. Lauren regarded her husband with a look that made him feel like a foolish child, and she nodded slowly. "Yes, with another man, Trav. It's been 24 years since you and I became exclusive, and I haven't dated anyone else since then. I've been a loyal wife and devoted mother to our children, and I believe I deserve a night out with someone else. Just a chance to experience something new. Not seeking love, but seeking pleasure. Just lovemaking," she explained. "I'm 47, and I won't be attractive forever. I want to explore other options while I'm still desirable and can have them at my fingertips." Travis's jaw slowly dropped in disbelief. He knew he had heard his wife correctly, but surely she couldn't be serious, could she? He didn't even need to voice the question. Lauren nodded at him as though she could read his thoughts. "Damn," he muttered, as she rose from the table and ascended the stairs to change clothes. Descending moments later, Lauren looked stunning in a little black dress that hugged her figure. It featured a daring cutout revealing part of her chest without a bra, and it barely reached mid-thigh in length. Her makeup was subtle. A beautiful woman needed little adornment, and her long blonde hair was pulled back into a high ponytail. It was a sight to behold. Lauren noticed that at that moment, her husband was completely under her spell. "I won't allow this, Lauren," Travis declared, rising from his seat. "I don't know what you're thinking or what you're up to, but you won't go through with this while still being my wife." Lauren's bright smile twisted into a bitter grin. "You won't spoil my evening, Trav. You can talk tough, but deep down, you know you won't divorce me over this. Where else will you find a woman like me? You know it's true, and the kids will be furious with you for tearing our family apart. Toughen up, Travis. Let me enjoy myself for a while, and then it'll just be you and me again, growing old together. You love me, Travis. You don't want to be alone while I have plenty of options." A car horn honked outside. Grabbing a small bag, Lauren moved towards Travis, attempting to kiss him goodbye. He recoiled as if jolted by an electric shock, stepping aside. Lauren looked momentarily surprised and hurt. Then her expression hardened into anger. "I'll be back, maybe." As she mentioned leaving, he watched in horror as she exited through the door. Could his 23-year marriage really be ending? That's what it seemed like, he pondered. Lauren didn't even glance back at him as she departed. Researchers have confirmed a sad but undeniable reality. Individuals blessed with good looks often have an advantage in life over their more average peers. They easily form friendships, attract more attention, and even receive better grades from teachers. In Lauren's case, this proved true and only intensified when she turned 13 and fully developed her bosom. She quickly learned that a flutter of her eyelashes and a smile could win over almost any boy she desired. And for those boys who played hard to get, she simply emphasized her physical attributes a little more, sealing the deal. Like virtually every boy she encountered, Travis fell under Lauren's charm almost immediately upon meeting her. His family relocated to the city just before he started 8th grade. Meeting Lauren on his first day of school, he was instantly captivated. Travis, a talented athlete who was popular among his peers, eventually gathered the courage to invite Lauren on a high school date, and she accepted. They began dating and stayed together until the initial weeks of their junior year in the local high school. That's when Lauren ended things with the young man to pursue Landon Estes Jr., a starting player on the school's football team. At that time, Travis stood at 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 110 pounds, whereas Estes was 6 feet 2 inches tall and 190 pounds. Despite feeling hurt, Travis acknowledged the situation. He understood that Lauren was on a different level in terms of looks. In fact, most of the boys at school couldn't compete with her in that regard. Because Lauren was romantically involved with a football player, she socialized with the popular crowd at school, while Travis remained one of the many anonymous figures roaming the hallways. He dated and befriended a few selected students, but had no interaction with Lauren during his school years. He noticed that on the rare occasions they crossed paths, she treated him as if he were a total stranger. Initially angered by this, Travis eventually came to terms with it. By his senior year, Travis had grown 2 inches taller and gained 40 pounds. He was a handsome and athletic young man, though he didn't quite measure up to Lauren. But then again, few did. He attended prom with his attractive but not exceptional girlfriend. That night, they both lost their pureness to each other. Lauren was crowned prom queen, while her date was named prom king. They also had lovemaking after graduating. However, prior to this, she wasn't a maiden. Sometimes she manipulated situations to her advantage. Lovemaking was always part of the equation for any guy fortunate enough to date Lauren. After high school, Travis pursued accounting at Michigan State University. Over the course of his 4 years there, he dated several girls but didn't engage in any serious relationships. Meanwhile, Lauren studied marketing at Central Michigan University. She dated and slept with numerous men during her college years, even becoming involved with a marketing professor to improve a B to an A. After years of being desired, Lauren had become highly adept at the game. Through sheer coincidence, they both landed jobs in Grand Rapids after college. Nearly a year post-graduation, Travis and several co-workers were unwinding on a Friday night at a popular bar and restaurant when Lauren entered with 2 companions. All eyes immediately turned to the striking woman in the short green dress with a plunging neckline. Lauren hardly acknowledged the attention. By then, it had become routine for her. "Who's that goddess?" Steve White exclaimed to the entire table of co-workers. Without pause, Travis instinctively responded, "Ladies and gentlemen, meet Lauren Soames, goddess, and my middle school sweetheart." Every head at the table turned from the woman to Travis, many gaping in surprise. "Do you know her?" one incredulously asked. Travis winced, disliking any attention drawn to himself. "We were about 14. Once high school started, I became invisible, and she ignored me for all 4 years," he muttered quietly. "So, got any juicy stories from back then?" quipped one of the women at the table, prompting laughter from the group. This caught Lauren and her friend's attention. For a moment, she thought she recognized one of the men at the table, but she wasn't certain. The trio took a seat nearby, with Lauren facing the table of the vaguely familiar man. "Dude, why not go over and say hi?" White urged. "You're practically drooling, Steve," joked Casey Gardello, another colleague. "She acted like she didn't know me for 4 years. I don't get why she'd remember me now," Travis muttered, nodding in agreement with several others. Meanwhile, Lauren observed the man while enjoying her meal. Then, she snapped her fingers and pointed at him. "It's not wise, Lauren," cautioned one of her friends. "Pointing at someone in a restaurant could lead to trouble in certain places." She paid no heed to her friend's comment. "I'll be back shortly," she declared. "I need to greet an old friend." Lauren practically leaped from her chair and strode over to Travis's table. "Trav, hello. So happy to see you," Lauren exclaimed as she approached him. Travis rolled his eyes at his friends before turning to face his former classmate with a forced smile. "Lauren, it's nice to see you," Travis responded, almost devoid of emotion. Rising from his seat, Lauren closed the distance between them and tenderly kissed Travis on the lips, placing her hands on his shoulders. Their colleagues sat in disbelief. Travis, too, was taken aback. Lauren noticed and flashed him a smile that wasn't entirely innocent. She felt at ease playing this game, knowing he couldn't reciprocate. "Let's head back to our table. I'll introduce you to my friends," she suggested, taking his hand and practically pulling him along. He spent most of the evening with Lauren and her 2 friends. Before leaving, Lauren took his phone, added her number, and kept his for herself. Lauren found it intriguing that Travis appeared indifferent to her. It was a new experience for her. He was polite in the restaurant, but divided his attention equally between her and her friends throughout the evening. Though she kissed him several times, he never responded. On Monday morning, Travis's co-workers at the bar questioned him about his interaction with the stunning woman and were shocked when he revealed he stayed at the bar for only an hour before heading home. "She's impressive, but she's out of my league by about 14 levels. "I get it," he grumbled. "I don't need that kind of drama." Travis encountered a similar distress in the parking lot at his workplace 2 days later as he left work. He muttered to himself upon spotting her waiting by the car, though he reluctantly acknowledged that, dressed in a size too small, she exuded undeniable allure. "Why didn't you call, Trav?" she murmured softly as he approached. Travis fought the urge to widen his eyes as he scanned Lauren's figure like a starving man glimpsing his first meal in weeks. Her low-cut top was unbuttoned down to her cleavage, and the hem hovered just about 5 centimeters below her waist. "Damn," he muttered under his breath, as she leaned in to wrap her arms around his neck and plant a kiss on his lips. He found himself powerless as she pressed against him, his hand instinctively slipping around her waist, inadvertently grazing her backside clad in underwear as her dress rode up. Her tongue slid into his mouth like a serpent, and abandoning his briefcase, he seized her other part of rear, the kiss extending indefinitely. After what felt like minutes, they parted, and Lauren readjusted her dress to conceal her undergarments. Several colleagues, stunned, quickly departed in their cars. They dined at a restaurant outside the city center, enjoying their meal. Though Lauren frequently tugged at her dress, both Travis and the young waitress appeared entertained by her struggle. Travis remained cautious of Lauren, but in the presence of a seductively dressed goddess, he was defenseless. His best hope was to perform admirably in bed that night. "Oh my God," Travis murmured to himself as he gazed at the undressed Lauren for the first time. This woman was the goddess Travis had always envisioned. If this was his only chance to give it his all, he had to ensure that lust didn't overshadow his emotions. Sated, they lay facing each other, locking eyes. Lauren grinned lasciviously. "I made a huge mistake years ago," she whispered. "You're incredible. Who knew? If only I'd realized. We've wasted so many years, Trav." Lauren recognized potential when she saw it. Though Travis didn't match her in looks, he was handsome, fit, and seemed destined for success, and he excelled in bed. "I thought she was speaking to herself," Travis admitted. Despite Travis's reservations, primarily about her self-esteem, their relationship flourished. While her physical beauty was evident, he gradually fell for the person Lauren truly was. "I purchased an engagement ring, but before proposing, we sat down to discuss our views on fidelity," Travis stated as they settled at the table for a serious conversation. "What occurred in the past remains there. The same applies to me, but I need clarity about the future. Moving forward, I want full exclusivity between us. No exceptions. If you doubt your ability to commit to this for us, I need to know now." He placed a small black box on the table between them. Lauren locked eyes with Travis, then glanced at the box. "I will never betray my husband, never," she declared as Travis opened the box. Travis recalled her words. Apparently, his wife didn't consider this betrayal, given the advance warning. He knew that wasn't the case. She hoped he would interpret it that way, because if he didn't, he wasn't truly accepting it. Travis knew Lauren had countless opportunities to stray over the years, yet as far as he knew, she'd rejected them all, as a faithful wife should. She was a perfect 10, no, a 12, while he considered himself a 6 at best, leaving plenty of room for someone more physically compatible to catch her eye. Assuming she didn't have an affair I'm unaware of, she's been a true wife for 23 years, Travis pondered. He should have been grateful for those years, but he wasn't. When he said, "I love you," he meant forever, not just a paltry 23 years. In fact, not a week went by without Lauren receiving proposals, not just from men, Travis added. She knew she wasn't just beautiful, she was extraordinary, a rare goddess among the merely beautiful. When God crafted his wife, he had an exceptional day, Travis always joked. Initially, Lauren would inform Travis whenever she faced unwanted attention, aiming for full transparency. Yet after a few years, Travis assured her that he trusted her enough not to disclose everything. He only wished to be informed if the unwelcome advances persisted after her initial rejection, so he could intervene if necessary. Conversely, women rarely approached Travis, partly because he used his wedding ring almost like a shield. Within moments of meeting a woman, Travis would enthusiastically discuss his wife and children, effectively dousing any potential interest. Unbeknownst to him, this behavior often deterred potential flirtations. Lauren remained oblivious to how her husband's actions shut down advances, or worse. Their almost fairy tale marriage endured for 22 years, until Rosa Esposito entered their professional realm, working at the same public relations firm as Lauren. Described akin to a Bob Seger song, Rosa captivated with her dark hair, big brown eyes, and ample bosom, drawing men like a magnet. Despite her potential at superior solutions, she remained a loyal assistant to Lauren, who was deemed the love-makingest woman around. At 42, Rose had been married for 15 years, but professed her dissatisfaction with matrimony. She openly shared tales of her extramarital escapades, painting vivid pictures of passionate encounters with various partners. "So you've never strayed since you got hitched? You seem like a rock-solid woman, but I find it hard to believe you don't crave something more," Rose remarked during a coffee break at work. "Well, I'm not saying I'm not curious, but I'd never betray Travis," Lauren responded. In recent months, she noticed a decline in attention from men at bars and restaurants, with younger women often receiving the looks she once commanded, sparking doubts about her allure. "Let's play the what-if game. What if your hubby gave you the green light? Then what?" Rose inquired. Lauren's expression revealed she had never contemplated such a scenario before. Thoughts raced through her mind. "I suppose if I had his blessing, it would change everything," Lauren admitted with a mischievous grin. "Ever thought about asking for it?" Rose suggested. "They say everything worth having is worth asking for." Lauren had never considered this possibility before. Her face flickered with intrigue before darkening with uncertainty. "He'll never grant me permission. Never," Lauren asserted. "Should I do everything for you?" asked Rose. "Implicit permission. Tell him. Then take what you want, regardless of his answer. Convince him he loves you enough to allow it, that you can navigate this together. Love isn't the issue. You love only him. Travis stirred at the sound of a car nearing the house, realizing it was past 3 a.m. Glancing at the half-empty bottle of Woodford Reserve, he quipped to Lauren as she entered. Great night, huh? He scrutinized the caricature his wife had become. Disheveled hair, absent makeup, rumpled clothes. She seemed more smug than remorseful. I could say the same to you, she retorted. You didn't have to wait up. You know I'm going to bed. And you, maybe. But never again with you, he shot back. Lauren shot him a look of disdain and ascended the stairs. Travis poured more bourbon and resumed watching ESPN. He spent the night in his recliner, stomach grumbling. By 9, he prepared breakfast. As he ate, he heard the shower in the master bathroom. Typically, Lauren would descend in a robe, hair wrapped. Today, she emerged impeccably dressed and made up. Did you leave me anything to eat? She asked. I made coffee, but you can cook for yourself. And since you're dressed at home, now's the time to talk, he stated firmly. Lauren was surprised by Travis's stoicism. She had expected him to rage irrationally, easier to manipulate. Rational Travis made conversation more challenging, she realized. Don't you want to hear about last night? She asked meekly. Travis detected her air of superiority. Did she truly believe he wanted to hear about being betrayed? Hardly. I want to know your vision for our marriage moving forward, Travis replied evenly. As I mentioned yesterday, I plan to explore other men over several years. Just lovemaking, no love. I love only you. But I want the thrill of something new. You're amazing in bed, but I crave variety. I want to experience other men while I'm still desirable. I've devoted 23 years to you without a thought of betrayal. I seek the excitement of the unknown. You're incredible, but I desire some diversity for a while. Then we'll ride into the sunset together, and I'll be grateful for the experience. Spoiling you exclusively for the rest of our days, Lauren explained. Travis listened intently as Lauren spoke, preparing toast and jam for his coffee. He found her manner of buttering toast while discussing his life's most crucial matters rather detached. He had numerous questions. Is it all about seeking variety? Am I insufficient for you? He inquired with a strained voice. Before she could respond, he interjected. So you propose an open marriage for a while, then returning to monogamy later. Does this imply I can see other people too? Lauren struggled to stifle her giggles. The thought of her sweet, reserved husband asking another woman out was simply amusing. Travis was the most earnest about marriage of any man she had known. However, if this was what it took for him to theoretically agree, then yes, she affirmed. Naturally, I expect it to be purely physical for you as well. Travis raised his eyebrows and shrugged. Lauren didn't grasp the significance of this gesture, but she had an inkling. Would you like to go out with Rose? She's a nice woman from my office. I'm sure she'd be delighted, Lauren proposed, knowing her friend would be willing to help her achieve her goal of remaining married while pursuing other carnal partners. Travis looked perplexed. The lustful 21-year-old bachelor in him desired Rose, but the responsible 47-year-old married man knew he couldn't indulge. I'd be happy to go out with Rose, but no, honey, thank you. That'd make me as much a cheater as you were last night, he stated. Lauren's initially smiling face twisted into a grimace of anger. I am not a cheater, she shouted. Well, if you say so, honey, he responded far more seriously than she anticipated. But I still don't agree to this. You'll come around, honey, because I'm doing it regardless, she retorted. On Monday morning around 11 o'clock, Rose entered Lauren's office and noticed her discontent. To hell with that close-minded fool, Lauren muttered, shutting the door behind Rose. Darn it, he even turned down a date with you, Rose frowned. I didn't realize I was on the table, but forget it. How could he resist this? She remarked, gesturing to her body. How was the date? Did you have fun or did Travis spoil it? Rose inquired. The date was amazing. Jonas certainly knows how to please a woman, Lauren gushed. God, it's been ages since I've been with another man. I definitely appreciated the change. Who do you think I should try next? They both burst into laughter. Lauren found solace in the absence of immediate divorce papers. With minimal interaction between them, she opted not to inquire about Travis's intentions. Unbeknownst to his wife, Travis wasn't eager to rush into divorce. He held on to hope that she'd come to her senses and halt her foolish plans of infidelity. He believed forgiveness and moving past her transgression were possible if she abandoned her reckless pursuits. His optimism grew when Lauren skipped a date the following week. Despite their continued bedroom separation and strained communication, he saw a glimmer of hope. However, on the next Friday evening, Lauren was once again impeccably dressed, seemingly prepared for a date. "Are you seriously considering this again with the same guy? Or are you eyeing someone else this week?" Travis queried sharply. "Damn, Trav, did you not hear anything I said? This isn't about you. It's about me fulfilling desires before I lose my allure. It's not that I want you any less. I just crave more variety. You get it? I'm constantly pursued, and I just want to indulge. But I'll always come back to you," she explained. "What if I don't want you to come back? I won't share you. I won't stand by while you enjoy yourself. This isn't who I am. I won't wait as you test half the men in town. One date, maybe I could stomach, but twice? It's utter disrespect. Betrayal. Spending all night out? Partying? We're finished. That's not my purpose on this earth," he asserted. "Wah, wah, 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 wah," she mocked, wiggling her fingers. "You don't want to lose me. It doesn't have to be all or nothing." Last week, Travis instructed his lawyer to prepare all the necessary documents, hoping they wouldn't be needed. He intended to call his wife Monday morning, but first he had to inform his daughters. When he called them that evening, neither Jackie, 21, nor Michelle, 19, appeared outwardly surprised. But upon speaking with both, he realized Jackie may have had an inkling. "So you knew she was heading toward this disaster and didn't tell me?" he exclaimed over the phone. "You don't think I deserve to know what was happening?" "Please, Daddy. I was in a tough spot. Either way, one of you wouldn't have been pleased with me. Plus, it's her body. It's not yours to control. And if she wants to share it—" "Stop. Don't go on," Travis interjected. "I get that she's put you in a tough spot, but don't tell me she can do whatever she pleases with her body whenever she pleases, because this body belongs to her. Dolly's vows abolish discussion about her body." "I understand, but—" he started before she cut in. "Damn, Daddy. I'm sorry, Daddy," she murmured. When Lauren came in at 2 a.m, Travis wasn't around. Despite being an hour earlier than her last outing, she seemed a bit more disheveled. Gabriel Esposito was a hefty, powerful man, possibly the strongest bed partner she'd ever had. By night's end, she could barely move, anticipating a couple of bruises from his grip by tomorrow. Overall, it was a fantastic night. She figured she could see Gabriel again sometime. Receiving divorce papers at her office on Monday morning left Lauren shocked and embarrassed. She broke into tears and rushed to the ladies' room, where Rose found her shortly after. "You should have expected him to serve you," Rose remarked. "He's trying to hurt you back. Men can be so childish, seeking retaliation. Give him a week to stew alone. He'll come crawling back." Pulling herself together, Lauren returned to her desk, grabbed her phone, and dialed her husband's number immediately. "How could you do this to me in front of everyone at the office? I know you're hurting, but I deserve better, Trav," she practically yelled into the phone. "After 23 years, don't I deserve more than you deciding on your own to open our marriage? If I'm not right for you, couldn't you have given me a heads up so we could part ways like adults? I don't want civility. I don't want a divorce. I still love you," she sobbed. "I still love you, but every time you sleep with someone else, that love fades," he growled. "My love isn't bottomless like yours. I always believed that. Maybe we were both wrong." Despite Travis's resistance, Lauren pursued divorce. Her lawyer arranged marriage counseling, with Travis unwillingly participating. As they entered the consultant's office, they were surprised to find Lillian Kamako waiting. "Data on marriage counselors suggests most aim to reconcile divorcing couples, often with a bias favoring women," the consultant began. "Let's start with the basics, Mrs. Wesley. Did you indeed inform your husband about your intention to date other men for a few years?" Travis tried to hide his smirk. Lauren struggled to conceal her shock. "Yes, I did," she replied quietly. "That's what I want. I don't need him to do it for me. It won't affect our marriage." "We'll conclude here," the consultant declared. "Apologies for the inconvenience, Mrs. Wesley. I'll inform the judge and put an end to this charade." But, Lauren stuttered. "Honey, if you thought for a moment that what you did to your husband would work with me, then you're delusional. You should be ashamed of yourself, but evidently you have no shame. Frankly, you disgust me," Miss Kamako said. During the following month, Lauren reached out to Travis multiple times daily while he settled into a small apartment nearby. He ignored her calls and texts. Eventually, she enlisted their daughter's help, prompting them to call him. "Dad, you still love her. If she stopped seeing other men, would you reconsider?" Michelle inquired during one of these conversations. "She's still at it even after I filed?" Travis asked, his voice trembling. Silence followed, confirming his suspicions. Michelle didn't call again or urge him to reconcile. Travis was taken aback by how swiftly news of his impending divorce spread, especially among single women. At work, several women expressed sympathy for his marital woes, including those who were mutual friends with him and his wife. Travis wasn't naive. He recognized that not all their condolences were purely compassionate. Connie Mayung, a longtime friend of his wife's, called to express her condolences and almost overtly offered him emotional support. Travis was surprised by her open flirtation, considering she had never shown interest in him throughout their acquaintance. "I wouldn't pursue a friend's husband. That's just wrong," she assured him. "But now that you're single, things are different. I'm interested in you. Surprised?" "I'm flattered, but I'm not officially single yet. Connie, we won't start anything until after the divorce. I may be old-fashioned, but I won't cheat," Travis insisted. "You're such a Boy Scout, Trav. That's one of the things I admire about you. Can you at least set me up on a date once you're free?" Connie requested. "Of course," Travis agreed. "But I don't want to disrupt your friendship with Lauren. You've been friends for years." "I appreciate your consideration, but I shouldn't let an opportunity pass just because it's unconventional," Connie replied. "Maybe I'll give you a call when I'm off the leash," Travis joked. Connie, an attractive Asian woman standing at 5 feet tall with a toned physique and waist-length black hair, was certainly appealing to Travis, who found it surprising that she showed interest in him. True to his word, Travis contacted Connie on the day his divorce was finalized. They went out for dinner and to a local jazz club that Saturday evening. Connie noticed Travis's unease and remarked on it. "I feel like a clueless teenager," he confessed. "It's been over 26 years since I went on a date with someone other than Lauren." "Are you telling me the contraceptive in your wallet is the same one from your last date before Lauren?" she teased. "Should I have brought one? Damn, I didn't even think about it." "Well, I'm definitely out of practice," Travis admitted. At the end of the night, Connie kissed him gently, leaving them both feeling content. Travis promised to call again. Removing his wedding ring on the day his divorce was finalized didn't seem significant to Travis, but apparently it was a big deal to single women. Several female coworkers noticed the absence of his ring and commented on it, leading to a noticeable increase in flirting in the office. This was uncharted territory for Travis, and one day during lunch, he confided in his best friend at work about the sudden attention. "Wow, there are so many stunning women in this office. How did I not notice this before?" Travis exclaimed. "You, my friend, were the epitome of a henpecked man," Robert Ardito remarked. "You were so head over heels for her that you didn't even see other women as attractive. Sure, she's beautiful, but you let her control you, and maybe that was part of the issue. She's always testing boundaries. There's value in that. And you were so conditioned, emitting such a vibe that not a single woman even glanced your way." In the initial month post-divorce, Travis went on 4 dates, 2 with Connie. While he hadn't yet slept with any of them, that wasn't his aim. By the second month, demand remained high, and he ended up sleeping with 2 women. Travis's daughters, who had been more in touch with their mother than him lately, repeatedly heard her claim that while she could attract any man effortlessly, their father struggled to find companionship, let alone a steady girlfriend. Feeling sorry for their father, they paid him a surprise visit one Saturday morning about 2 months after the divorce. Travis wasn't pleased about being awakened at 8:36, especially after entertaining his guest late the previous night. Sonia, a buxom 25-year-old, was the daughter of a friend in need of a reliable escort for her wedding. The evening went so well that they decided to continue it at Travis's apartment. Just as Sonia was asleep in his bed, Travis, clad in a robe, opened the door to find his daughters smiling with bags of breakfast goodies. "What's going on?" he asked, surprised as they entered. "Hi, Dad. Can your 2 favorite daughters join you for breakfast?" Jackie chirped as they unpacked the bags. After exchanging kisses on the cheek, Travis led them to the kitchen table. They were midway through the bagels when Sonia emerged from the bedroom in one of Travis's shirts, partially unbuttoned and likely nothing else. "Sorry, didn't know we had guests, baby," Sonia said. "Mom said you call the shots." Both girls blushed as Sonia poured herself coffee. No, Sonia, these are my daughters, Jackie and Michelle," Travis clarified, pointing to each. "We were having breakfast, bagels with salmon," Sonia giggled, causing her ample, braless bosom to jiggle. She brushed against Travis's arm and settled into a chair beside him. The 4 engaged in casual conversation until Jackie broached the topic of Travis's recent interactions with Lauren. His mood shifted, marking the first time he felt bothered in days. Until that moment, he believed it nearly impossible to be upset around Sonia, despite her being a bit too much for his 48-year-old self. "I have to admit, Dad, we thought you might be missing Mom already," Michelle remarked. "We know she misses you, but we thought when you were gone, she'd be living her best life. I know I was her anchor, though. She's been entertaining them 2 at a time in our old bed." "Dad," Jackie exclaimed as Sonia giggled and Michelle frowned. "She's not promiscuous, you know. Seriously, consider this for a moment. How many different guys has she slept with since we broke up? And those 2 I knew about before I left." Both girls blushed and cast their gaze downward. "Wow, if it's 2 guys a month for, 10 months? That's 20 different guys with 3 guys a month. 30 for me. That's a lot of guys," Sonia remarked. If looks could eliminate, Travis's daughters would have put Sonia 6 feet under in seconds. She was well aware of this. "Hey, don't blame me if a woman can't keep her legs shut," Sonia quipped. Children, let's not ruin my good weekend," Travis intervened. "Sorry," all 3 young women muttered simultaneously. "So, are you 2 an item?" Jackie asked Sonia quietly. "You don't look much older than me." "Your dad said we're the same age. But don't worry, I won't ever be your stepmother. We're just friends. He's a great guy. He was my date at the wedding reception last night, and he's kind of a hottie. Did I mention he's a great guy?" "Well, we can agree he's a great guy, though we know he can be a bit of an idiot at times," Jackie remarked. "And yeah, he's kind of attractive for someone old enough to be your dad." Now it was Sonia's turn to blush. Travis blushed too. "Hey, babe, remember we have lunch with the newlyweds' families at the hotel at noon? I need to shower and grab some clothes from my place before we go," Sonia reminded. Both daughters rolled their eyes at their father. "Mom, she's my age," Jackie informed her mother during lunch a few weeks later, and it didn't seem like a one-time thing. "They spent quite a while together. They enjoyed each other's company. I don't think he'll come crawling back to you anytime soon." "No, you just caught him on a good day. He probably helped a friend's kid and got lucky. She's probably a loose woman who will sleep with anyone." "Your dad's a great guy, but he's not a player," Jackie retorted. "And somewhere along the line, you decided it was all about you. Was it worth it?" For the first time, Lauren's face betrayed the strain of what she had to endure. From Rose's perspective, everything sounded much rosier than it actually was. She couldn't tell her daughter that the lovemaking was ordinary, but no, it wasn't worth it. Nor could she admit that she never imagined Travis doing anything other than moping over his beautiful ex-wife. She was so self-absorbed that she failed to realize a handsome, if not stunning, man with great qualities, intelligence, and a stable job could be highly desirable in the dating scene, not just for middle-aged women. She knew post-divorce Travis dated several women, including her old friend Connie, and now with some young, promiscuous woman the same age as their eldest daughter. Instead of wallowing at home, he went on dates like a single 20-year-old and garnered more attention than he deserved. When she discovered her friend was dating her ex, she kept it to herself, assuming it was out of pity. But when the second date happened, she confronted Connie privately, her voice noticeably raised. "I thought we were friends, Con," Lauren exclaimed. "You're supposed to have my back. Women need to support each other. But he didn't hurt you, Lauren. He's a good guy. Amazing, actually. He's everything I look for in a man. Why shouldn't I date Trev? Women are lining up for him. He's prime dating material, and he's a true gentleman. Plus, he's great in bed. I'd go out with him anytime he asks. How could you push away such a catch?" Lauren stood in silence, gaping at her friend. She was starting to realize that her error was snowballing. She loves Travis and despises returning to an empty house each day, dreading sleeping alone at night. Travis, on the other hand, never envisioned his life becoming so eventful. He would have been content with his old mundane routine, yet, apart from that, life was treating him well. Work was fulfilling, and his social life was vibrant. He enjoyed the company of women of various ages, with many of his dates leading to closeness. He wasn't actively seeking a long-term commitment, but he relished the variety. There was more to life than being married to a beautiful woman. Marla Goodling sported shoulder-length silver hair with streaks of purple, pulled back into a ponytail beneath her Chicago Cubs baseball cap. Her snug blue Cubs t-shirt accentuated her ample chest, while her light blue Levi's hugged her figure like those of a 20-year-old. Despite being 60 years old, seated in the left field bleachers at Wrigley Field, she garnered more than her fair share of attention. Among those admiring her was Travis Wesley, the ex-husband of one of Marla's longtime employees, Lauren Wesley. Travis and Marla attended a Cubs game as part of a weekend getaway to Chicago. Marla had worked alongside Lauren Wesley for over 15 years. I've met Travis at several company functions where he accompanied his then-wife, And I always found him to be handsome and pleasant, Marla reminisced. She knew that Travis and Lauren had divorced about 2 years ago, while Marla herself had been widowed for around 5 years. Her husband had passed away in a car accident. During this time, she had only been on one date, after which she decided to obtain Travis's phone number. Yes, Travis remembered her. He found it hard to forget a woman who exuded both elegance and beauty. He would be interested in having dinner with her. Absolutely, he agreed. This occurred several months prior to the present moment. Their initial date unfolded at a high-end restaurant, followed by a concert at the Philharmonic, with Marla providing tickets. The evening concluded with a kiss at her doorstep. Their second date involved a Saturday hike, during which Travis took intermittent breaks, prompting giggles from Marla. It turned out she and her late husband were avid hikers and climbers. Despite Travis's belief in his fitness, he discovered he was mistaken. He also learned of Marla's toned physique for her age and captivating gray eyes. The date culminated in tender lovemaking on Marla's living room rug following a passionate makeout session on her sofa. Her blend of sophistication and girl-next-door charm intrigued him. Marla enthusiastically agreed when Travis suggested a weekend of sightseeing in Chicago as their third date. On their first outing, Marla mentioned to Travis that she had no intention of informing Lauren about their relationship. While she wouldn't deny it if asked, she had no intention of broadcasting the fact. Marla also informed Travis that Lauren had informed her colleagues that she and Travis were divorcing due to irreconcilable differences. Travis reiterated the same story he had told others. Lauren had cheated on him with at least 2 other men without delving into further detail. In the 2 years post-divorce, Travis has fostered several robust relationships and relished what he deems an exceptional bed life. His partners held him in high regard, with some aspiring to be more than just partners. While Travis aimed to rebuild trust in women and pursue marriage, Lauren had different intentions. As she had disclosed to her then-husband before their initial date, she sought only carnal gratification. Though still alluring to many, she wasn't seeking emotional connections like most of her companions. This fundamental contrast between the ex-partners posed an issue for Jackie, deeply involved in wedding preparations funded by her content father. When Lauren suggested to Jackie that both parents attend the wedding unaccompanied to ease tension, Jackie readily agreed and relayed the idea to her father over lunch that week. "Is this your brilliant idea, or your mother's?" Travis inquired sternly. "I intend to bring a lady with me. I'm footing the bill for this affair, and I plan to enjoy it with my companion." "Have you taken dance lessons as I have, specifically for my wedding?" "It's rather endearing." "No buts, Jackie. She's evidently trying to pressure me, acting selfishly to sway the situation in her favor. I'm sorry, but I won't attend my daughter's wedding without a date. If you lack the courage to inform her, then I certainly will. She can come alone or with a companion of her choice. I'll bring mine," Travis asserted. "Understood, Dad. I'll talk to her. I appreciate your perspective and am eager to see you dance, but could you perhaps bring someone closer to your age?" "I can accommodate that, but do watch Sonia and me dance." Travis beamed, receiving an equally wide smile in return. Travis escorted Connie Mayong to the wedding, despite their disagreement over the sea green dress he purchased for her. Travis reasoned that as the father of the bride, clad in a tuxedo, she required a new dress, which he gladly financed. "And I'm aware it necessitates shoes," he added with a grin. Walking his eldest daughter down the aisle proved to be one of the most bittersweet experiences for Travis. It was everything other fathers had described, yet he acknowledged it was a wonderful day. He, Connie, and his children reveled in the festivities, dancing late into the night. The only discordant moment arose when his ex-wife arrived with her own date. While Travis remained indifferent, the man spent much of the wedding leering at Travis, and later, at several women, behaving like a boorish drunk. Upon Jackie's request, Lauren swiftly escorted the man out, visibly embarrassed. In a brief encounter in the restroom, Lauren confronted Connie, accusing her of stealing her man. Connie calmly denied the accusation, stating Travis had divorced Lauren before they began dating. Lauren fell silent, allowing Connie to exit without further altercation, unwilling to mar the family's special day. A few months after the wedding, Michelle visited her father and appeared uneasy. Travis observed her for a moment before probing, "Okay, Mitch, what's up?" "You've seemed kinda on edge all evening." Michelle blushed deeply and began to stammer. Travis sensed something was amiss. Dad, you know Mom sometimes talks about reconciling with you, about winning you back once she stops seeing other guys. Did you two, have any closeness or anything?" she asked. My personal life isn't your concern, young lady, Travis snapped. But no, I didn't sleep with your mother. And what? Well, the thing is, she has an STD, Dad. I overheard her conversation with her friends, and she mentioned having syphilis, Michelle disclosed quietly, avoiding her father's gaze. Travis looked surprised, then saddened as Michelle watched him from the corner of her eye. I guess you're telling me because you're worried about me, Travis said. But it's standard protocol to inform all potential partners about the disease so they can get tested. I didn't know that. I was just concerned about you, Dad, she replied. I know Mom is still seeing other people. Some of my friends warned me that she's quite promiscuous. It's always awkward when a friend tells you your mom isn't perfect. A few days later, Travis received an unsettling call from Marla. He realized she shared Michelle's concerns, likely also worrying about her own health. If you're wondering whether I slept with my ex, the answer is a resounding no, Travis assured. Believe me, Marla, I understand your worry, but I can't control my ex's actions. Scandal is the kindest word I've heard about her lately, Marla remarked. In recent months, her extracurricular activities had become sideline gossip. Seems the longer she's single, the more she lets her guard down. Lauren leveraged her STD as leverage to win Travis back. Satisfied with her past experiences, 6 months after being declared cured, she plotted her reunion. She still harbored some resentment toward Travis for initiating their divorce, which wasn't her original intent. She assumed he wouldn't dare divorce someone like her, thinking it unlikely he'd find someone of her caliber. Her plan might have succeeded if other women hadn't pursued Travis. Confident in her allure, she couldn't fathom Travis being as drawn to others. I know he's great, but can't these women see he's not on my level? She lamented to Rose one evening as they sipped margaritas, awaiting their dates. Rose encouraged her friend's lifestyle, underestimating Travis's depth. Expecting Travis to sulk while she enjoyed herself, Lauren and Rose kept tabs on him post-ultimatum, only to find his post-divorce bed life rivaled hers. If Lauren were honest, she might admit her ex-husband's emotional fulfillment seemed superior. While Travis genuinely enjoyed dates, Lauren confined herself to her circle, though without closeness. After her STD scare, she noticed a prolonged lull. Maybe it was time for her and Travis to reunite, she mused. Travis was taken aback by the voice on the other end of the line. He hadn't spoken to his ex-wife in almost 2 years. One of his daughters must have given her his new cell phone number. While he hadn't forbidden them from doing so, he made it clear he saw no need for direct communication with her again. Hi, Trev, she cooed in her sweetest tone. I think it's time for us to talk. And I thought we agreed not to talk until Mikhail got married. But since that hasn't happened yet, maybe we'll go back to silence, Travis replied. Still the same Travis, still trying to deny that you love me. But deep down, you know you want me back, she persisted. Still the same Lauren, he retorted. You still think everything revolves around you. Look, Trav, I know you're still angry with me, but I truly love you. Maybe I should have just cheated on you and kept it hidden, but that would have been deceitful, she admitted. It was still cheating, Lauren. Just because you told me you were going to do it doesn't make it any less real. You did it because you thought I'd never leave you. Do you think so little of me? Travis said. I know you think you're a 10, hell a 12, but beyond that, you're beautiful. I don't need to live in your shadow. The past few years have shown me I'm more than just the husband of a beautiful woman. Other women want what I have to offer and are willing to reciprocate emotionally. My recent years have been wonderful. Why would I want to date a selfish woman again who clearly doesn't respect me and no matter what she says, doesn't love me the way I loved her? Loved in the past tense, he concluded. After hanging up, Travis turned to the woman beside him. Ready for round 2? He asked Sonia. Sonia eventually found her soulmate and married him, but Connie and Marla continued their relationship with Travis. He loved both of them in his own way, but never remarried. They too loved him in their own way, and both women accepted this dynamic. Several years later, both were invited to his second daughter, Michelle's wedding. This displeased Lauren, who didn't invite her boyfriend. She complained to her daughter, but Michelle didn't sympathize. After me, Jackie, and her family, Connie and Marla are the 2 closest people in Dad's life, Michelle replied. They love him for who he is and prioritize him over their own selfish interests, which not everyone can say about themselves. He was yours, and you left him for more lovemaking. Why? Simply because you feared aging and thought he had no other options, that he'd never leave you, not for anyone or anything. Travis was content with his life, even if it wasn't his first choice. He left a situation he deemed unacceptable. Lauren's life wasn't one of loneliness and regret. After all, she was still attractive, and beautiful women often just need to show up for men to take notice. Lauren was frequently approached and had several short-term relationships. However, none of them blossomed into anything lasting. Reflecting on her choices, Lauren regretted telling her then-husband she was leaving him, still unable to accept that Travis had given up on her so easily. How could she have misjudged the situation so severely? She was a 12 out of 10, but he was only a 6. It shouldn't have ended this way. Growing up, I was surrounded by the whispers of betrayal and heartbreak. My father's indiscretions weren't just family secrets. They were open wounds in our household. His frequent absences, unexplained late nights, and the smell of cheap perfume on his shirts were a stark contrast to my mother's unwavering devotion. I often wondered why she stayed, why she endured the humiliation. As a child, I believed in the sanctity of love, thinking it was something magical that could weather any storm. But the cracks in their marriage taught me otherwise. They revealed a harsh reality where trust was fragile and love could be weaponized. I promised myself my life would be different. When I met Jody in high school, I saw in her what I hoped for: kindness, loyalty, and a sense of shared purpose. We built our relationship on what I thought was a foundation of mutual respect and transparency. From the day we exchanged vows, I envisioned a future free of the chaos and pain I grew up with. I was determined to provide her with the stability my parents never had. Yet, even the strongest foundation can be undermined, and as I would soon learn, illusions of security are no match for the unpredictable storms of life. The night my wife, Jody, decided to spend it in the company of another man wasn't just another evening. It marked the end of an era in my life. She assumed I would take it in stride, that her pursuit of a fleeting thrill wouldn't matter to me. Perhaps she was correct about her excitement, but she miscalculated how deeply it would cut. What she saw as a harmless adventure, I saw as a betrayal that unraveled the very fabric of our marriage. I was at my desk, sipping coffee, thinking about the morning with Jody. We met in high school and mostly dated each other, though we briefly dated other people during disagreements, always coming back to one another. We gave each other our pureness before prom and married 9 months after graduation. As far as I knew, I was her only partner. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I hesitated. I hate scam calls, especially the ones from the IRS. But this time it was Jody's office number. "Hi, honey," I answered. A man's voice responded, sharp and formal. "This isn't your wife, Mr. Taylor." I blinked, confused. "That's me, John Richard Taylor III, but I go by Trey." The man introduced himself. "I'm Michael Hamilton, a colleague of Jody's. I need you to meet me this afternoon." His tone didn't explain much beyond that. I felt a sudden rush of concern. "Is she okay?" "She was fine when I last saw her," Michael replied. "But I have some information about her that I think you should know. Can you meet me at noon?" He wouldn't explain over the phone. I agreed reluctantly, still unsure if this was some kind of joke. At noon, I met Michael outside Spike's restaurant. He suggested we walk to avoid being overheard, so we headed toward Central Park. "Your wife has been spending a lot of time with a man named Stan Morrison at work," he started. "They go to lunch together every day, and today they were openly discussing their plans for tomorrow night. Dinner at the Hilton, followed by dancing, and then spending the night together." My stomach sank. "Are you telling me they're sleeping together?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "He's already made reservations, and your wife is out shopping for clothes for the date." I felt numb. How do they think this will work? "She thinks you love her enough to let her experience another man," he said. "She believes it won't affect your marriage." I stopped walking, trying to process everything. "Why are you telling me this?" Michael's expression hardened. "I was married for 9 years. My wife had an affair and the legal system screwed me over. Now, I'm trying to help someone avoid my situation." We talked for a while longer before he left. I was left thinking about my marriage and what the future held. If Michael was telling the truth, my marriage was over. It scared me how easily I could consider that possibility based on a brief conversation with a stranger. I thought back to my childhood and the pain my mother endured with my father. He was a heavy drinker and womanizer, having multiple affairs and openly mocking her. When I asked why she put up with it, she simply said, "I love him." One day, when I was about 11, my dad took me to his girlfriend's house. I ended up walking home after getting bored of petting her dog. When I told my mom where I had been, she didn't confront him, but 2 days later he spanked me with a belt for breaking a plate. Looking back, I realized it was because I had snitched on him. After seeing how my mother suffered, I couldn't imagine condoning Jody having an affair. Even thinking about it made me sick. Call me whatever you want, but I wasn't going to live through what my mother did. Eventually she left my father, and life got better for both of us. She remarried and is happy now. Jody and I live in a house owned by my mother and stepfather, so I was stuck wondering, confront her or ignore it? Wait and see? As a salesman, I knew I had to be proactive, not wait for things to come to me. But in this case, if Michael was right, I didn't know Jody at all. She knew how I felt about infidelity, so I decided to take action. But how do you act when you don't even know if the situation is real? I planned out every possible scenario. I imagined the worst-case outcome and asked myself what I could live with. If I couldn't accept the worst, I would have to make another choice. I made up my mind. First, I found a private investigator. After a quick meeting and spending a lot of money, we had a plan in place. Now I had to figure out how to act when I got home. When I arrived, Jody was there. She kissed and hugged me like she always did, and I had to decide how to respond. I could act normal, which would allow her plans to proceed, or I could drop a hint about what I'd learned. But if I did that, she might just deny everything and wait for things to blow over. I wasn't going to live with that doubt. On the other hand, if I acted suspicious, she might abandon her plan. I decided to act normal. We had dinner, and I fried the pork chops like usual. Acting normal was harder than I expected, but either she was a great actress or, as Michael said, she was so confident that she didn't even try to hide anything. Around 11 p.m., I went upstairs to get ready for bed. Jody was already asleep. I showered, then lay awake, unable to sleep. At 6 a.m., she got up, dressed, and went downstairs. A few minutes later, I did the same, only to find she was already gone. We rarely left the house without kissing each other goodbye, but today was different. It was Friday, usually a good day for RV sales, but I decided to take the day off. I called my boss, then contacted the dealership's attorney to ask for a divorce lawyer recommendation. He referred me to his wife, but warned me she didn't take cases from husbands who cheated. After he called her, I met with the lawyer. I explained my conversation with Michael Hamilton. She asked why I'd hired an investigator based on an unverified story from a stranger. I told her about my parents' marriage and my personal stance against infidelity. She suggested I wait and confirm Hamilton's story, adding that if Jody was as confident as he said, then she'd have nothing to lose by having an affair. I told her that I wouldn't tolerate any affair, big or small, and if Jody went through with her plan, I wanted her served by Monday. If Hamilton's lying, I'll have to eat crow, I said, but if he's telling the truth, I'll be ready. She assured me the paperwork would be ready if needed. By 1 p.m., I was back at work trying to sell a van to an elderly couple. At first, I was doubtful about selling a 45-foot motorhome to them, but after spending time with them, I realized they were in great shape and had a lively, loving relationship. I envied their energy and bond, hoping Jody and I could be like them one day. They picked out their van, and we took it for a test drive. Mr. Jacobson drove confidently, and I could barely focus on the sale, enjoying their conversation. It made me think of how I wanted my own marriage to turn out. I decided to give them a tray discount, taking a bit from my commission. They bought the van, smiling as they left. It was time to head home. I checked in with my investigator and was reassured everything was set. At 5:30 p.m., I pulled into the garage. Jody's car was in its spot, and the house was quiet, no dinner cooking. I stayed calm, placed the package from the investigator on the mantel, and sat down to wait. At 5:45, Jody came downstairs, looking stunning in the outfit Michael had described. She had her overnight bag in hand. "Wow, you look gorgeous. What's the occasion?" I asked, trying to hide the knot forming in my stomach. "One of the guys at work has been asking me out, and I thought it'd be fun," she replied casually. "What do you mean, go out with him? Like a date?" I pressed, the confusion creeping into my voice. "Yes," she said, not missing a beat. "We thought since you're the only man I've ever been with. I'd like to sleep with someone else. We're going to dinner, then dancing, and spending the night at a hotel." I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't believe how calm she was. "You can't be serious. You're really spending the night with another man? I'm not agreeing to that." "And who's this we are talking about?" I demanded, struggling to make sense of it. "It's no big deal," she said dismissively. "Just one night of fun. I'll be back tomorrow, and it'll be like nothing happened. I might even pick up a few tricks you might like." There's no way I'm letting you go out tonight with someone else, I said firmly, my voice tight with anger. Don't be ridiculous, she shot back. I'm serious, Jody. If you go, our marriage is over, I said, each word heavy with finality. Just then, we heard a car honk from outside. That's him, she said, heading toward the door. I moved quickly, blocking her path. Please, don't do this, I said, my voice pleading as I reached out. I have to go, she replied, stepping around me and kissing me on the cheek. I'll be home by noon tomorrow, and everything will be fine, she said, already heading for the door. If you leave, you won't have anywhere to come back to, I warned, my heart sinking with the words. Now you're being really stupid, she said, rolling her eyes. Enjoy your night thinking about how much fun I'm having. We'll talk tomorrow. Good night. She kissed me and left. I didn't watch her get into the car. I walked over to the fireplace, turned off the recorder, and carried the box of trash bags upstairs. It took me nearly 2 hours to remove every trace of her. I emptied her closet and bathroom vanity, even taking her birth certificate, high school diploma, and social security card from the safe. I set everything by the garage door and gathered up her family photo albums, school awards, and the Remington bronze statue from her grandfather. I cleared out all her magnets from the fridge, stuffed everything in her car, rolled it out of the garage, and parked it on the street, leaving the keys on the driver's seat. I climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned for hours. Finally, I got up, made coffee, and tried watching a Hogan's Heroes marathon, but it didn't help. For the next 2 days, I couldn't sleep at all. I felt like a zombie. By 11 a.m. on the third day, I'd finished a sale with the Jacobsons, wrapping up all the paperwork. I was home by 11:45, and the locksmith had already delivered a new set of keys. The investigator was there too, handing over the video footage he'd recorded over the past 18 hours. At 12:30, I was sitting in front of the TV, watching the tapes when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to find Jody standing there. Hey, my key doesn't work, and why is my car outside? She asked. I blocked the door. Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore, and your car's outside because I don't want it in my garage. What are you talking about? This is my house now, she demanded, trying to push past me. I said, I told you last night. If you got in that man's car, you wouldn't have a place to come back to. All your stuff's in your car. You can't be serious, she said, clearly shocked. It was just... She started, but I didn't let her finish. I slammed the door in her face. She pounded on the door, so I opened it again. If you don't stop banging, I'll call the police and have you arrested, I threatened, though I knew I probably couldn't do that. But I had nothing left to lose. You can't do that! This is my house! She yelled. This house belongs to my mother and stepfather, I replied, and they've decided you don't live here anymore. Now leave! She stood there, speechless, and I slammed the door in her face again. I went back to watching the tapes, but the anger inside me kept building. After a while, I glanced out the window and saw Jody sitting in her car. I went to the kitchen for water, but poured myself a gin and tonic instead, my frustration growing. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't just a ring. It was constant, relentless. I was ready to snap. I imagined tearing into her and feeding the pieces to the dogs. I opened the door, and there stood her sister Judy, still pressing the doorbell. Jody's crying at my house. I want to know why, she said. I didn't care. Screw it, I thought, and slammed the door in her face. But the bell rang again, and this time I yanked the door open and slammed her hand against it, causing her to nearly lose her balance. Ring that bell one more time, and I'll break your fingers one at a time, I warned. Judy pushed against the door, holding it open. Talk to me, please. I stood there for a moment before slowly opening the door and letting her in. She looked at me. I thought you loved Jody. I can't believe you kicked her out over a stupid disagreement. Stupid disagreement? I scoffed. She told me you had a fight over a walk and that you kicked her out. Judy sighed. Well, that part's true. She wanted to go out and I didn't. But she didn't tell you she wanted to go out with a guy from work, did she? I shook my head. Did she tell you they were planning dinner, dancing, and then a hotel room? I didn't wait for an answer, just played the audio tape I'd made the night before. Judy listened, her face falling. I had no idea, she said, shaking her head. Yeah, neither did I replied flatly. So what are you going to do? She asked softly. Divorce her? She added, almost as an afterthought. No, I said bitterly. This marriage is over. Judy nodded, then stood up. I walked her to the door. She hesitated, looking at me, and I opened it, escorting her out. The rest of the evening and all of Sunday, I did nothing but eat grilled cheese sandwiches and drink gin and tonics. Self-pity had taken over. Then there was another knock at the door, Judy again. "You said if I rang the bell one more time, you'd break my fingers, so I knocked," she said. "I've been talking to Jody all day. What you told me is true." I let her in, motioning for her to sit down. "So, what's the deal?" "She says nothing happened," I asked. Judy nodded. She admitted it was a disaster. They went to the hotel, drank too much, passed out. She woke up, realized what she was doing, and insisted he take her home. "Well, that's a story," I muttered, still not buying it. "You believe her, don't you?" Judy asked. "I believe she and this guy spent days, maybe weeks, planning it. They spent time together, talked, grew close. He knows more about my marriage than I do. They planned to cheat, and it doesn't matter if nothing happened. That's a betrayal." Judy was silent. "You don't believe her, do you?" she asked. "No," I replied firmly. "Even if nothing happened, you're not going to forgive her?" she pressed. "Not in this lifetime," I said. We reached the door and she paused. "When this is over, can we still be friends?" I took a deep breath. "Jody and I are getting a divorce. If she fights it, it'll get ugly. By the time it's over, you probably won't want to be friends with me anymore." She smiled faintly. "I see. Well, I think I'll miss you." She placed a hand on my cheek and kissed my other cheek softly, then left, closing the door behind her. Since Saturday, my phone had been off most of the time. Jody tried reaching me repeatedly, but eventually gave up. I managed to speak to her father, who tried to convince me that since nothing physical had happened with Stan, it wasn't a big deal and I should move on. I explained it to him the same way I had to Judy. After the call, he realized divorce was inevitable and sighed before hanging up. On Monday, I called my attorney and told her about the weekend's events. I also instructed her to serve Jody with a summons that day. My attorney assured me it would be done by the end of the day. I spent the rest of the day not remembering much. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. I saw it was Jody's office number and decided to answer. "Hello?" I said. "Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor. This is Michael Hamilton. I thought you might want to know that there was some excitement here today," he said. "Really?" I asked, curious. "Yes. Your wife was served with a summons, and after reading the papers, she fainted. An ambulance took her to the hospital. When the paramedics left, Stan Morrison picked up the papers, looked them over, and almost fainted too. As serious as the situation was, part of me found it darkly amusing, but I had no sympathy for either of them. "I'll keep you posted on any developments," Michael said. "Please do," I replied before hanging up. A moment later, my phone rang again. It was Judy. "Hello?" I answered. "Jody's in the hospital," she said. "So?" I replied coldly. "I just thought you might want to know." "I didn't ask," I added more sharply than I intended. "Are you really that heartless?" Judy asked. "My coldness comes from your sister," I answered. "I warned you this would go south. This is just round one." The following weeks played out predictably. Jody tried to talk to me countless times, but I ignored her. Her parents urged me to listen, but I refused. My mother spent a lot of time trying to comfort me, but I insisted I was fine, though she didn't believe it. Michael Hamilton called daily, and I enjoyed his calls. He was the only one who knew what was going on with Morrison. Jody came to work but just sat at her desk, only meeting with her lawyer. She and Morrison barely spoke, at least not in front of anyone. Me? I was just stalling. Our lawyers set up a meeting. Jody, her lawyer, my lawyer, and me. It was the first time I'd seen her since I kicked her out. She looked thinner and worn out, and I was surprised to see Judy there. Jody's lawyer asked if everything was okay. "Are you sure you want to be here?" I asked Judy. "I'm here for Jody," she replied. "That's not what I asked," I said, staring at her. "But fine, stay." Jody was already sitting at the table, so we all took our seats. Her lawyer started. "Mrs. Taylor categorically denies the infidelity and asks for the divorce petition to be dismissed so they can work on saving the marriage. She's willing to go to counseling." My lawyer and I exchanged a glance before he spoke. If there was no infidelity, could Mrs. Taylor explain her actions that night? We all looked at Jody. "I'll be happy to," she said calmly. "A gentleman friend picked me up." "Does he have a name?" my lawyer asked. "Of course, but his name isn't important. Nothing bad happened, so no need to involve him." She repeated what Judy had told me. Champagne, dinner, more champagne, getting too drunk to have fun, passing out, and then coming home to be kicked out. Poor misunderstanding, she sighed. I made a mistake. I love my husband and I want him to forgive me. I looked at Judy, who nodded in agreement. My lawyer, who had been quiet until now, asked, Okay, let's assume everything you said is true and no sex occurred. Was there any touching? Anything that wouldn't pass the husband test? Absolutely not, Jody insisted. Judy nodded. My lawyer glanced at me and I glanced back. I picked up the remote, pressed play, and a screen dropped down from the ceiling, showing Jody walking to Stan Morrison's car in our driveway. He opened the door for her, and they kissed, long and passionately. Then they got in and drove off. I paused the video. Lie number 1, I said, looking around the room. Everyone sat up straighter. Jody turned pale, and Judy just stared at her sister. On Thursday, after Michael Hamilton's call, I spoke with my investigator. We planned to videotape Jody's every move on Friday night, starting when Stan Morrison arrived at our house. Thanks to Hamilton, we knew the location of their date and the room number they had booked. My investigator was able to get access to their suite before check-in. You said there was no inappropriate touching, right? I asked Jody. Yes, she replied, though unsure. I pressed play. The video showed Jody and Morrison at the Hilton's restaurant, where his hand was on her rear. Lie number 2, I said. Jody looked around. Her lawyer was reading the divorce petition, and Judy was inspecting her nails. The video continued. Jody and Morrison ordered champagne, finished it, and rushed to the elevator. I had paid my investigator $1,000 to get into their suite before they checked in. 4 minutes after entering, Jody was already entertaining Morrison. Then, Jody screamed and ran out, followed by Judy. I paused the video. Seems my client forgot some details, said Jody's lawyer, quickly packing up and leaving with the sisters. Later, I returned to the dealership, and Judy approached my booth. She paused for a moment before asking, May I sit down? Sure, I replied, motioning to the chair across from me. We both sat in silence for a few moments. Finally, Judy broke the quiet. You knew, didn't you? Knew what? I asked, confused. When I came to your house that Saturday, she continued, her voice steady but laced with emotion. You already knew they were sleeping together. I sighed, a weight settling in. Yes, I admitted. I watched the video before you arrived. Judy's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I pressed on. And they weren't just fooling around, Judy. They were doing it. She's my wife, and she let it happen. A long pause followed, then she asked softly, Why didn't you tell me? I thought she'd admit it herself, I said, the words coming out heavy. I thought she'd agree to a divorce. If she had, I would have spared you and your family the details. I've always liked your parents. The room fell quiet again, the tension thick. My phone rang, breaking the silence. I answered immediately. This is Michael Hamilton, came the voice on the other end. Just so you know, your wife called yesterday and quit. She didn't even clear her desk. Thanks, I said, my voice flat. Let me know if you hear anything else. I hung up without another word. Judy opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the office loudspeaker. Trey, you have a call on line 6. I nodded to Judy before stepping away to take the call. It lasted about 15 minutes, during which Judy remained still, her gaze distant. When I returned, she looked at me with a certain finality. She's gone, Trey. What do you mean gone? I asked. She packed up and left. Probably moved into her own place, Judy said quietly. I don't think so, Judy added. She asked me to tell your parents she was sorry for disappointing them. It wasn't just your parents she disappointed, I replied. Yeah, we know, she said softly. Judy stood up, glanced at me, and walked out. Later that night, I watched the full video again. My lawyer still had the earlier copy, but I had my own. Watching it made me numb. There was no romance, no love. He didn't care about her feelings. The pain and anger swirled in me. Part of me wanted to scream in agony. Another part wanted revenge. My thoughts were a mess. I fell asleep in the chair, my mind swirling with thoughts of the betrayal. Over the following weeks, my lawyer tried to arrange another meeting with Jody and her lawyer, but he couldn't get in touch with her. A month passed, then another. I checked in with Judy and her parents. No one had heard from Jody. I thought about hiring a tracker, but my lawyer advised against it. I canceled the credit cards and took half the money. The records showed she hadn't used any of the remaining funds. If she stays gone long enough, we could file for desertion, but we'll see. Then the phone rang. Trey Taylor, I answered. Good morning, Mr. Taylor. It's Michael Hamilton. Do you remember me? Of course, Michael. How's everything going? I replied, sitting up in the chair. Not bad, he said. I just wanted to update you on my situation. Remember my divorce? Yeah, I said. Your ex was living with her boyfriend. That's right, Michael confirmed. Turns out the guy's a thief. He convinced my ex to steal from her company, and now they're both in jail. I chuckled. Good for them. Are you still at the same place? Michael asked. Yeah, I replied. That's actually why I'm calling, he continued. Since your wife left, things have been quiet. Stan Morrison's been keeping to himself, but lately some of his calls have been interesting. Interesting how? I asked, intrigued. He was talking to your wife today. I frowned. How do you know? I overheard him say, I miss you too, Jody, Michael said. I sat up straighter. Did you hear where she is? I got her phone number after he talked to her, Michael explained. He left his phone on the desk, so I grabbed it and wrote it down. Nice work, Michael, I said, impressed. Thanks, he replied. Keep me posted if you hear anything else. I got the number, passed it to my attorney, and decided to make the call. The phone rang, and someone picked up. Hello? Hi, Judy. It's Trey. What do you need? She asked, her tone flat. Do you or anyone in your family know anyone in Florida? I asked. Why? She responded, cautious. Because I think Jody's there. Why do you care? Judy shot back. I want a divorce, and she needs to sign the papers, I explained. When are you going to ask her? Judy replied, sounding uninterested. I don't need to ask, I said. My lawyer is already handling it, but it would save him some trouble. She lives in Fort Lauderdale, Judy said, almost reluctantly. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Why didn't you say anything before? Over the next few days, Judy gave me Jody's address and confirmed that Jody knew the divorce papers were ready. I gave the address to my attorney, and he immediately sent them. Judy and I planned to have dinner and then watch the video at my house. She made it clear, though, that revenge wasn't on the table, and she wouldn't sleep with her brother-in-law. Thursday morning, Michael Hamilton called again. Hey, Mr. Taylor, just a quick update. Stan Morrison quit his job today. No notice, just packed up and left. He told someone he's moving to Florida. Interesting. Thanks, Michael, I said. By the way, how's everything with you? Michael asked. My wife confessed to the theft and pled guilty, I replied. She'll get a light sentence, but her boyfriend's looking at serious time. I laughed, and we chatted a little longer before I ended the call. I immediately dialed Judy's number. How long have you known Stan Morrison was moving to Florida? I asked when she picked up. There was a long silence on the other end. Judy, how long? I pressed. A few days, she finally answered. How many times have they seen each other since she moved in with him? I continued. 4. She's been here twice, and he's been there twice. 4 times? I couldn't believe it. You knew she was still seeing him, and you were okay with that, after everything? Trey, she's my sister, Judy said quietly. I ended the call. Moments later, Judy called again, but I ignored it. I sat in my cubicle for a while, then walked over to the repair shop to talk to the mechanics. One of them, a friend of mine, was a retired Army vet. He'd lost part of his leg and fingers in Iraq, and he was one of the few who understood what I was going through. We sat outside, and I brought him up to speed. I could make sure they don't make it to Florida, he said. No, I replied. Neither one is worth going to jail over. I just want to be rid of her. I can make that happen too, he offered. I laughed. Nah, living with myself is punishment enough. We talked for a while longer, until I heard over the loudspeaker, Trey, call line 4. Back at my cubicle, I picked up the phone. Trey Taylor. Trey, please don't hang up. I hung up, walked over to the receptionist and said, no more calls today. I'm going home. When I turned onto my street, I saw Judy's car parked in front of my house. I pulled into the driveway, and by the time I reached the garage, she was already at the front door knocking. She remembered my threat about the doorbell, so I entered through the garage and made my way to the kitchen. She kept knocking, so I decided to answer. You're not welcome here, I said as I opened the door. Listen, she started. I shut the door in her face, this time without slamming it. I heated up some spaghetti and meatballs, then went to my bedroom where I fell asleep by 10 p.m. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when I saw Judy waiting for me. She probably thought I wouldn't cause a scene at work. She was wrong. As I tried to pass her, she grabbed my arm. Damn it, Trey, listen. I pulled my arm away. You don't have anything I want to hear. You let her come back to me while she was sleeping with that fool over and over, and you didn't tell me? All 3 of you can rot in hell. It was a while before I saw Judy again, but she stayed in touch with my mom. By then, the whole dealership knew what was going on, making for a long day. I stuck around the dealership trying to figure out my next move, then headed home. Later, my mom called and invited me over for dinner. I went, and she made Italian food. We ate, but the evening took a turn when she said, "I talked to Judy today. Mom, if you bring up this family again, I'm leaving," I warned her. "Trey, listen. There's something you don't know," she said, her tone serious. "I know everything I need to know." "Jody cheated and I'm divorcing her," I replied, trying to keep my anger in check. "Good, but what about the baby?" she asked, her voice softer. "What?" I shot up from the table, stunned. "I talked to her. She's pregnant," Mom explained. "You didn't tell me." My voice cracked with disbelief. "She asked us not to," Mom said. "So you listened to her and ignored your own son," I shot back, hurt and frustrated. "We thought you might need more time to forgive her," she said, her voice tinged with guilt. "Forgive her? Have you lost your mind? Do you remember what it was like living with a cheater?" I couldn't hold back the anger anymore. "Honey, things are different now. People are freer to try new things," she said, trying to explain. I stormed out. Was I living in an alternate universe? My mom had been through hell with my dad's cheating, and now she was telling me cheating was okay for my wife. I loved her, but her naivety was astounding. It was like she'd buy an encyclopedia from a traveling salesman in the age of smartphones. I drove past my house and ended up at a car dealership. I had my keys with me, so I went inside, found the employee lounge, and laid down on the couch. I tossed and turned until nearly 5 a.m. before falling asleep. I woke up at 10:30, and my boss found me and put up a sign asking people not to disturb me. When I finally got moving, one of the salesmen told me that the boss wanted to see me. I wasn't feeling great, my back ached from the couch, and I desperately needed a shower, but I made my way to his office. "Trey," he said, looking up from his desk, "you need some time off, and I can make that happen. You remember the Jacobsons? The couple you sold the blue Prevost to?" "Yes," I replied. "Well, last week, Mr. Jacobson had a heart attack in Vancouver. He's okay now, but they need someone to bring the carriage home, and they've asked for you." "Sounds perfect," I said. "When can I leave?" "Tomorrow," he answered. "Janie will book your flight. Use the company credit card for expenses." "Great. I'll get packed," I said, feeling relieved. "How long should I take?" "Take 4 days for the trip back," he instructed. "But take 10. The Jacobsons aren't in a rush, and we don't need you back too soon. Hand over your deals to Ben, and he'll handle them." When I got to Vancouver, I went straight to the hospital. Mr. Jacobson had a lot of tubes and machines hooked up, and Mrs. Jacobson was fussing over him, trying to make him comfortable while he grumbled. It was clear they just wanted to be near each other, and it made me smile. "Mrs. Jacobson, it's good to see you," I said. "Hi, Trey. How was the flight?" "I picked up Mr. Jacobson," I said. "Now be quiet, Robert." "You heard what the doctor said," Mrs. Jacobson teased. "I can tell him to be quiet now, and he can't argue. Doctor's orders." She winked at me. We sat, talking while Robert drifted in and out of sleep. Every time we thought he was out, a nurse would come in to check his vitals or adjust his meds. Mrs. Jacobson told me the motorhome was parked nearby and that their grandchildren had been with them. Her grandson had flown home, but their granddaughter was packing to return with me once Robert was discharged. Just as we finished talking, the granddaughter walked in, carrying 2 suitcases for her grandparents. She was about my age, attractive, and clearly uninterested in me. After a brief exchange with her grandmother, Mrs. Jacobson turned to me. "Darla has been driving our car for the last week. She'll take you to the bus to get it ready," she said, but Darla didn't seem thrilled. "Darla, stop it. You'll be fine," Mrs. Jacobson added. "She doesn't want to go back with you, Trey. She thinks she should stay with us. By the way," Mrs. Jacobson continued, "your boss said you might need a few extra days and suggested traveling through Yellowstone. We promised Darla we'd do that on the way home." "I'll see what I can do," I replied. As we were leaving, she handed me a letter authorizing me to take the bus across the border and kissed me on the cheek. "Thanks for helping. Be careful." Darla and I drove to the RV park. She kept quiet, grunting and ignoring me. I tried to make conversation, but she wasn't having it. When we reached the bus, she went inside, taking the car keys with her. I asked her for the keys, but she tossed them at me, and I barely dodged them. "What's your problem?" I muttered as I picked them up. Fed up, I hooked the car up to the bus. After a short break, I considered grabbing a cold beer, so I went inside to see if the Jacobsons had any. "No beer?" I asked. "I'm not your maid." I shot back when Darla closed the fridge and stormed off. That was it. I was done with all the women in my life, Jody, Judy, my mom, and now Darla. Mrs. Jacobson was the only one still remotely civil, but even that was wearing thin. I disconnected the power and water, got in the driver's seat, and started the engine. By 8 p.m., I'd crossed into the U.S. and cleared customs. Darla had to step outside for the border check before returning to the bedroom. I was ready to get this trip over with. By 7 a.m. the next day, we were in Burley, Idaho. I'd stopped a few times overnight for coffee and sandwiches, but I was tired and irritable. Darla sat in silence next to me for a while before finally speaking. "I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat?" I snapped, remembering how she'd treated me the night before. "I'm not your damn maid," I said, pressing the gas pedal harder. She glared at me and stormed off to the bedroom. By 9 a.m., I needed to stop at a rest area. When I came back from the bathroom, she was getting off the bus. "If you get off, you can't get back on," I said, starting the engine. By noon, I was sore from driving, so I pulled into a parking lot between two trucks and collapsed on the couch. I passed out almost instantly. I woke up to the hum of the Cummins diesel engine and realized we were moving. Checking the time, I saw I'd been asleep for 5 hours. Darla was at the wheel, driving fast. After watching her for a bit, I figured she knew what she was doing. Her grandfather had obviously taught her well. I made some coffee and sat in the passenger seat. We drove in silence for 2 hours, but I started to get worried about the fuel. We'd been driving for about 25 hours, averaging 60 miles per hour, and had covered around 1,500 miles. At 8 mpg, we were almost out of fuel. "Hey, we should stop for gas," I said, but she didn't respond. I tried again. "We need fuel." Still nothing. Finally, she snapped, "I took care of it while you were snoring." Surprised, I went back to the couch and fell asleep again. I never saw her eat, drink, or use the bathroom during the trip, but she managed everything while I slept. After another 3 hours, we stopped at a truck stop in Dumas, Texas. It was past 10 p.m. I made sandwiches, grabbed coffee, and took the wheel, heading for Houston. I drove through the night, only stopping once for a bathroom break and some snacks. By 8 a.m., I pulled into the dealership in Houston. I needed a break, so I went downstairs to the restroom. It had been less than 40 hours since we'd gone through customs, but it felt like days. As I came out of the restroom, I saw the Jacobsons' car pulling out. The window was down, and I got an unsavory gesture from Darla. I returned it, then made myself coffee in the break room before crashing on the couch. I didn't stir until 3 p.m. When I woke up, I found a note from my boss saying he wanted to see me. I headed to his office and knocked. "You're monopolizing the break room," he said, half joking. "I got a call from Mrs. Jacobson. She wanted to know how you survived driving with her granddaughter." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. Apparently, Darla was a pain the entire trip. The Jacobsons didn't want her with them, and the grandson left because he couldn't handle her anymore. "Mrs. Jacobson was impressed you didn't strangle her," I smirked. "I wanted to, believe me." He laughed. "Anyway, they're glad you made it back safely. Mr. Jacobson will be discharged soon, and they want us to service the bus. They're even talking about buying it." "That's great," I said. "I thought they might sell it." He shook his head. "Not a chance. Now go home and get some rest. The break room needs a break from you." After just 3 days, it felt like I'd been gone longer. I showered, shaved, and slept for almost 30 hours. When I finally checked my phone, I realized I hadn't even thought about it. I dug through my clothes from the trip, looking for it, but my phone wasn't there. I called my boss. "Hey, can you check the break room and the coach for my phone? I think I left it somewhere." He called back a few minutes later, confirming no luck. "Damn," I muttered to myself. How many customer calls did I miss? I went to the dealership and caught up with a few client messages by noon. I was heading back to my cubicle after grabbing coffee when I saw Darla walk into the break room. I quickly ducked into the staff area and waited. After about 10 minutes, the loudspeaker called my name. I took my time sipping my coffee before heading to my boss's office. He greeted me and mentioned Darla Jacobson was there to return my cell phone, which I'd left in her grandparents' car. As he was talking, his phone rang, and he stepped away to take the call. I nodded at Darla and followed her into the showroom. She held out my phone, but I kept my distance, not reaching for it right away. After a few steps, she placed it on a nearby table. "Am I really that bad?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She left without saying another word. Back at my desk, I was processing everything when a loud crash from outside caught my attention. I saw a wreck involving 2 cars, and when I got to the scene, it was Darla. She'd been injured, but wasn't in immediate danger. As medics worked on her, she looked up and smiled. "You always catch me at my best," she said before passing out. The EMTs took her to the hospital. I called the Jacobsons to update them, assuring them Darla was okay. Then I heard Mr. Jacobson's cold response. "A broken arm. Too bad it wasn't her neck." After that, Mrs. Jacobson asked me to call Darla's parents, which I did. Later, I noticed 54 messages on my phone, mostly from my mother, Judy, clients, and one from Michael Hamilton. I set up appointments with the clients and ignored the rest. I left work at 5 p.m., heading home, but detouring to the hospital. At the information desk, I found Darla's room, where her parents were already visiting. Her mom introduced me to Ralph and Joanna Jacobson. They were friendly, but Darla's dad joked about how she'd talked non-stop about our trip. "Darla won't stop talking about it," her mom said. "I bet," I thought, recalling how unbearable she could be. After a brief conversation, I said my goodbyes, but Darla's dad stopped me to thank me for calling them. I nodded and left, feeling out of place. Back home, I debated calling my mother, but decided against it. That decision lasted for weeks, during which both my mother and Judy tried calling, but I ignored them. Even my stepfather reached out, and while I spoke with him, I cut the conversation short when he tried to pass the phone to my mother. I received the divorce papers from my attorney, sent to the address Judy had given me. Her signature was bold and written in red marker, and there was no mention of her pregnancy. If it was real, in 2 months, I'd be free. I was starting to think about staying single, which also made me think about my current celibacy. Damn it. I hadn't been with anyone in so long that I barely sat down before heading to the bathroom to shower and get ready for dinner. Just as I finished getting dressed, the phone rang. "Hello?" I answered. "Hi, Trey. It's Dottie Jacobson," came the voice on the other end. "Hi, Mrs. Jacobson. How's Robert doing?" I asked. "Call me Dottie," she replied warmly. "He's doing great. He's even planning our next trip to Colorado. I'm a little nervous about how he'll handle the mountains, though." "Don't worry, Dottie. His trainer will make sure he's safe. As long as he doesn't try to speed, he'll be fine." "That's what he says. He's been reading all about mountain driving." I chuckled. "Well, I might need some Valium before we go." She laughed, and I could hear the warmth in her voice. I liked Robert and Dottie. They were a good couple. "Anyway," she continued, "we're having a barbecue this Friday at 6 o'clock to celebrate Robert's recovery. Bring your wife. We'd love to meet her." I froze for a moment, realizing I'd never mentioned my personal life to them. Darla probably hadn't either. They didn't know I was almost divorced. "Thanks, Dottie," I said, regaining my composure. "I'd love to come." And with that, I ended the call. It was a great week at work. I sold 3 vans, one of which had been a high-end bus owned by a country star. My commission was excellent. I arrived at the Jacobson estate on Friday at 6 p.m. The house was impressive, and the garage housed their boat, which I'd driven over from Vancouver. A valet parked my car, which felt strange, but I went with it. Inside, there were about 50 guests. Dottie greeted me with a hug and asked where my wife was. "I'm in the process of getting a divorce," I told her. She pulled me back and said, "Your wife is an idiot." Then she put her arm around me, leading me to the crowd. When she mentioned introducing me to some nice young ladies, I knew I didn't belong. I decided to stay only briefly. While finishing my brisket and beer, I spotted Darla running away from a guy. I didn't expect her to be here, but I should have. She grabbed my hand before I could slip away. "Come on, Trey," she said, pulling me into the house and toward the library. Yes, the library. Once inside, she looked at me, clearly upset. "This guy's an a-hole. I have a behavior problem and need help." I started to walk out. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "I'm leaving," I replied, heading toward the door. "Before you kick me out?" she asked, almost pleading. "Because I agree with him," I said, turning back slightly. "He shouldn't have said that in front of everyone. Someone had to say it." "Damn it, Trey, you're supposed to be on my side," she shot back, frustration in her voice. "Why? The only nice thing you ever said to me was while you were lying in the street, bleeding," I retorted, my words sharp. She slumped onto a chair, and I stood still, not looking at her. "How's the arm?" I asked, trying to break the tension. "It itches like hell," she muttered. "I have to use this thing to scratch." She pulled out a tool from her cast that looked like a back scratcher. "I've got to go," I said, heading for the door. "Trey?" she called after me. "Yeah?" I turned back slightly. "If I promise to behave, will you have dinner with me?" she asked softly. I paused before replying. "Darla, I'm going through a divorce. I don't need the extra stress. and I'm likely to do something that'll make things worse. So no, dinner's not a good idea. Saturday morning, I packed up and left. My mom showed up at my door later that day, and I let her in. "I've been thinking it over, and I agree with you," she said. "There are things we can compromise on, but faithfulness in marriage isn't one of them. You reminded me of the pain with your father, and no one should go through that. I'm sorry for pushing you to get back with Judy. I was selfish, only thinking about the baby and the idea of being a grandmother. Please forgive me." I forgave her, and we hugged. We chatted for another hour before she left. Monday mid-morning, my phone rang. "Trey Taylor," I answered. "Good morning, Trey. It's Michael Hamilton. I have news." "What's the news?" I asked. "Stan Morrison called to ask for his job back, and they said no," Michael replied. I laughed. "Just thought you might want to know." "Thanks, Michael," I said, hanging up. Now I was on a first-name basis with him. Around noon, the Jacobsons' carriage pulled into the yard. I was with customers, so I couldn't greet them right away. 30 minutes later, after walking my clients to their car, I made my way to the bus. Darla opened the door. "Hi, come on in," she said. I stepped inside and turned left, avoiding the driver's seat. Once seated, I noticed the smell of lasagna from the kitchen. Darla handed me a glass of wine. "Clink," she said, holding up her glass. We both took a sip. It was a great Chianti. I thought I'd offer lunch instead of dinner. Also, I figured it'd be better to talk privately instead of embarrassing or pissing you off in public, she said. I asked my grandparents if I could use the bus, and when I explained why, they agreed. They just made me promise not to drive off if I got mad. "You said when, not if," she said with a smile. "He knows you well." I expected an argument, but Darla stayed calm, took another sip of wine, and turned to fill her glass. "I hope you're hungry. I made lasagna this morning. It's really good, if I do say so myself," she said, moving around the kitchen despite her cast. The doorbell rang. "Bring it in, please," she called. I went to open the door, and my boss stood there. I waved it off awkwardly. "It's okay," I said, closing the door and returning to my seat. Darla seemed at ease. She moved naturally around the small kitchen, clearly comfortable. I smiled, but I knew one of us would probably do something to annoy the other eventually. She asked me to sit at the dining table, and I did. The bus was tight on space, but the living area expanded with sliding drawers. We ate, chatted, and finished a bottle of Chianti. Neither of us had gotten on each other's nerves yet. After a couple of hours, I decided to head back to work. "Thanks, Darla. It was a nice surprise, and the food was great." "My pleasure," she said, walking me to the door. As I stepped down, she leaned in and kissed me gently. We both paused, shocked. "Is dinner still off the table?" she asked, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. "How about tonight? Let's say 7 o'clock. She gave me her address, and I started to leave, but we kissed again. It took me another 10 minutes to finally leave. I stepped off the bus and saw 6 faces, including my boss, watching me through the exhibit hall window. As soon as they realized I saw them, they scattered, except for my boss, who opened the door for me. "Well, I'm off to get ready for my date tonight," I said, laughing. 10 minutes later, Darla drove the bus out of the parking lot. As we headed to her house, my phone rang. "Trey Taylor." "So you managed not to eliminate each other, huh?" Dottie's voice came through. "Hey, Dottie, I think Robert's listening." "We want to hear your side," Robert said. "I'm a gentleman. I don't kiss and tell." I laughed. "Horse crap," Robert interrupted. "Watch your language, Robert," Dottie scolded. "Trey," she continued. "When Darla asked to borrow the coach, she was nervous, but finally confessed it was to make you lasagna. I had no idea she could cook. She blushed when she said it." "She made you lasagna?" I asked. "Yep, she just knows," Darla had replied, blushing. "Trey," Dottie said, "she's tough on the outside, but she's a good girl at heart. She's been hurt a lot and uses that attitude as armor. Just don't hurt her, okay?" "Understood," I said, though I thought Robert was overreacting. "I'm just saying, treat her right," Robert warned. "Don't worry," I replied. Before I could hang up, my phone rang again. "Trey, it's Judy," came the voice on the other end. The anger hit me instantly, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What's up, Judy?" "I just wanted you to know," she began, her voice tight. Jody kicked Stan out, but he came back today and battered her up. "She's in the hospital, Trey. Her nose is broken. She's in ICU and Stan's in jail." My heart sank. "What about the baby?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "She lied about it," Judy replied, her tone flat. "It's gone, and honestly, I'm done with her, Trey. She's still my wife until the divorce is final, I said. She stopped being your wife the day she signed those papers, Judy retorted. Goodbye. When we reached Darla's gated community, the guard acted surprised when I told him I was visiting her. He laughed as he called her to check, then wished me luck as he opened the gate. At dinner, I learned Darla liked steak and potatoes, medium rare ribeye with blue cheese and baked potatoes. I was impressed by how she handled cutting the steak with her arm in a cast. She ate half, then switched to her drink, and the waiter offered to pack the leftovers. I joked, I didn't know you had doggy bags here. The waiter grinned. First time for everything. As we left, the same guard was at the gate, but this time his expression was less amused. I glanced at Darla and joked, I don't have many dates, and he's not used to me coming home in the same car I left in. Usually, I take a cab. When we got to her house, she invited me inside. What would you like to drink? She asked. A gin and tonic, I replied. We sat in silence for a while, and then she made a move. I got the hint. We spent the night together. The next morning, I called my boss. I won't be in today, I said. Why not? He asked. I'm still on my date from last night, I replied. He laughed. The days following were unexpectedly quiet, as though the storm that had consumed my life had finally passed. The finality of my decision settled over me like a heavy but reassuring weight. I was done chasing answers and seeking closure from those who had broken my trust. I had moved on, not perfectly, not painlessly, but decisively. Darla and I continued to see each other. Her sharp edges softened with time, revealing a humor and depth that complemented her fiery nature. I discovered in her a shared resilience, a refusal to be defined by past mistakes. Our differences often led to spirited debates, but they became a source of growth rather than conflict. She challenged me in ways I didn't know I needed, and I found myself slowly, cautiously, allowing hope to bloom again. Jody's presence in my life faded like the final echoes of a distant storm. I received updates through Judy, but they felt more like distant news than personal revelations. I no longer felt anger, only a strange, muted gratitude for the lessons learned and the paths that led me here. My work at the dealership thrived. The Jacobsons became regulars, their enthusiasm for life a constant reminder of what a true partnership looked like. They often invited me and Darla for dinners, their support unwavering as they encouraged our relationship. It was at one such dinner that Dottie leaned over and whispered, "You've been through enough, Trey. Let yourself be happy." I still thought of my mother, of her misguided attempts to smooth over my life's jagged edges. Our relationship had improved, though her mention of Jody or the past still caused tension. But I'd learned to set boundaries, to choose the people and stories I allowed into my life. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself on the Jacobsons' coach, parked outside Darla's home. She'd invited me over for lasagna, and as I stepped inside, I was greeted by the familiar scent of garlic and herbs. She smiled at me, her cast finally removed, and raised a glass of Chianti. "To new beginnings," she said softly. I clinked my glass against hers, the weight of the past lifting slightly with each sip. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years I wasn't afraid to find out.